Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to this Operational Services Committee meeting. I'm afraid it's an enormous agenda today, as we carried over the committee meeting that would have taken place shortly after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. This meeting is being live streamed, so should at any time the live stream go down, we will pause the meeting until the technical issues are corrected. Right, let's move on to public question time. Do we have any members of questions from members of the public? Thank you. And any apologies and substitutions? Sorry.
No, Chairman, we have a full house.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Every.
Thank you, Chair. Not that, there might be a discussion, but item number 6, VCAC, I'm a trustee of the organisation and our CEO is giving his presentation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ambrose Smith and Councillor Webber.
I'm joint owner of a rental property, but we have received a dispensation from our monitoring officer. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Webber.
Yes, agenda item 19A. I'm a trustee of Liverpool Leisure.
Thank you. Councillor Ambrose Smith. David.
Yes, Chair. I'm Christine's just mentioned one, but regarding 19, there's 19A. I'm a trustee of that. I'll be leading the meeting prior to any discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ambrose Smith. Now moving on to Chairman's announcement. Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon. Missed the minutes. Minutes. Oh, it's up the top there. Right. Do we have any comments on the minutes held on the 13th of June? Is everybody happy that I sign those off as a true record? Thank you very much. Now on to Chairman's announcements. I'd like to welcome Isabel Edgar, the new Director of Operations. Isabel will be responsible for building control, environmental services, housing, planning and waste. And sadly, this will be Emma's last meeting as lead officer for this committee. Isabel will take over after today. I'd also like to welcome Hannah Walker, who's sitting in the public gallery. Wave your hand, Hannah. She is our new trainee Democratic Services Officer, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of Hannah at these meetings. I've also invited John Hill, Managing Director of ECSS, Sean Bradshaw, Operations Manager, ECSS, and Nigel Ankers, Financial Manager of ECSS, to contribute to the relevant item. Members will remember that at Council, we approved a hardship fund of £10,000. I'm pleased to say that we'll be going live with it this week. The fund will be available for those experiencing extreme financial hardship, vulnerable elderly, dependent children with a medical condition, and will be an emergency fund to top up utility bills and food. Information on this will soon be available on our cost of living pages. Officers will send information out to all members tomorrow, and we'll also send out the information to parish councils. I'm asked to remind members of our budget and debt management assistance, which is another way we can help people to identify other support they could be getting. And can I just give a quick update on warm hubs? The first warm hub was opened on the 17th of October, and by the 25th of November, we will have 11 warm hubs opened, with 2 more to be opened at an agreed date. All the information on warm hubs is available on their Facebook page, which gives opening days and times. And I would encourage all members to visit the local warm hubs if they have time. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the presentation of the VCAEC by Councillor Goldsack, or Mr. Goldsack, Mark Goldsack.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I sit before you today in a slightly different guise, but one I'm very proud of, and that's as the CEO of this wonderful charity, VCAEC. I've got a few slides. I don't plan on taking too much of your time. I've seen the length of your agenda today, but there's lots of stats and things in here. I don't plan on reading them out. I'm going to leave them up there enough time for you to read out and talk around the subject. So that's a great start. How do I get back to there now? Sorry, I think I'll have to go around and start again. I do apologise. Slide view. Oh, come on. Right, got it. Thank you. Thank you. Right, I'll go careful now. So going to introduce a little bit of VCAEC. There are multi-components to the volunteering charity, but basically we're a charity that looks after all aspects of volunteering for East Cambridgeshire. So you'll see some of the difficulties that we have faced, but this is not Ely-centric. It's not East Anglian-centric. It's based for East Cambridgeshire. So we service Bottisham, we service Stetchworth, we service Meeple, we service Littleport, so on, etc., etc. I'm going to walk you through some performance data, bringing you up to date for the first 6 months of this year. Talk about some of the issues and risks we've got, some of the ideas we've got for future projects, and then give a brief summary at the end and take any questions. So you can see yourself up there, month by month journeys. They've been fairly static, but let me just give you some feel. Even though the journeys in August and September went down, demand has gone up. It's also the holiday period. And what I'm talking about here is the voluntary car scheme. Let me just quickly back up on the voluntary car scheme for those that don't know. People volunteer their time to come and drive other people to and from typically health-related appointments, but not necessarily. We sometimes take people to go and see relatives. We sometimes take people to go shopping because that's the only chance they've got to getting out. But most of the visits are for hospital appointments, vaccinations, dental appointments, etc. So Addenbrooke's is by far our most obvious point of visit, and that's where we go an awful lot. What has happened in the last 3 months, which is incorporates a little bit of this, but coming out, is what we're actually seeing is post-lockdown rules. We're actually now seeing an extension of the NHS working day. And what we're seeing now is appointments are coming in from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 and 9 o'clock in the evening, which is putting an awful strain on our existing drivers. So we're constantly recruiting drivers, and I'll cut on that in a minute. The Helping Hands Gardening Service is a wonderful team of guys led by 2 supervisors. And what they do is we've got various volunteers from various aspects of the community, and they come and we go to households around East Cambridgeshire and tidy up their gardens. It's as simple as that. We'll tend to privet hedges, bushes, lawns, flower beds, etc., etc. But we leave it in an awful lot better place. There's an awful lot of people just can't do that. And quite frankly, we're not here to replace the role of a gardener, but these people just can't afford to do it. You can see the number of trips we're making in a month. So it's averaging out more than 1 a day. Sometimes we're doing a couple of jobs a day. We operate out of our own van. We operate all with our own tools, with our own insurances. But there's a couple of subliminal deliveries that come out of this. Not only do we delight the clients who get a fresh looking garden and a much client, and we take all the waste away as well, by the way, that's all part of the service. What also happens is those that deliver the service are greatly benefiting. So we've got some people with us that have had serious physical accidents in the years and don't quite function 100%, and they need something to do. We've got people with mental health issues that have come with us and benefit from the fresh air and being outside. So the Helping Hands team is a wonderful service. And again, it's focused on East Cambridgeshire. If I just give you an overview of some of the other aspects of the charity, we've got over 130 active members at the moment. And what these are organisations like a Village Hall Trust or a special group, and they join us and we keep them informed of various things. We help them with grant funding. We move them through lots of operations. But what's also is that they join us also so that they can then come and speak to officers here about future funding and things that they may be able to get on. We're doing a survey that's going out in the final quarter of this fiscal year. And we do that regularly. We haven't done that for a couple of years because of pandemic mainly, but just to see, are we hitting what they really need? We're doing additional training out to these members. The 2 training courses we're nearly completed to be ready for December onwards delivery is health and safety manual handling. And finally, we have done some particular schemes. We ran a scheme called What's Your Game that ended in August. And we also managed the Do It National Volunteer Register. Anybody around here that's I'm sure there are many people in here who are trustees or part of a village setup, etc. If you have a need for volunteering service, you can register it with us onto the Do It Volunteer database. And what we do is then we take that request, we take the list of potential volunteers, we try and marry them together and put you in touch and let you sort it out. So we've often been asked for people to work in charity shops as a live and living example. So we would help with that. So in summary, if I looked at current issues and risks, in the average age of our drivers, bless them, and I love them all dearly, I'm a young man. So a lot of the drivers are retired people, very active, very fit and able. But by the nature of the challenges of being on the road and being of that generation, there is a constant turnover of drivers. So we're always driving, and we tend to pick up a lot of people through social media. Even though that's the third age, we do pick up a lot of people through social media, but we also go outwards to our organisation saying, can you help us? General gardening demand, we're actually pretty good for this at the moment, but it's something we've got to keep an eye on again. You know, some people with the frailties and injuries that they carry, they're not going to be around and doing it in another couple of years' time. A big issue for us back on the driving scheme is the general rising cost of a vehicle. For many people in the room will be local government officers or members. You'll be aware of the magic figure of 45p. 45p a mile is what the HMRC allows you to claim back. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, when fuel was probably around 110, 120 a litre, 45p a mile, you could comfortably cover the cost of your insurance of your car, your use of your car, everything. Now it's at 190 plus a litre. 45p a mile isn't stretching quite that far. And that's putting pressure on us to get volunteer drivers to come and do the work. As I said, I've covered before, the reach is to the entirety of East Cambridgeshire, but we also are very aware and work with partner agencies. So, for instance, there is a car scheme that operates in Burwell. Why wouldn't we want to just partner up and work with them as opposed to try and pinch each other's breakfast and try and serve the same people? And similarly, there are other schemes in Bottisham that we work with. Finally, the other issue that we've got, whilst we're extremely grateful for the funding we received from East Cambs, we do still have some certain issues, and we're looking at ways around this. I've given you 2 or 3 examples here of we had the influx of the wonderful Ukrainian people giving them things. And then they wanted lifts to hospital, but hadn't got the donation money to pay for the drive. So, you know, we've had to sort that out and try and manage that. And similarly, you often get people that want the garden needs and they just can't afford to pay. We are actually now ourselves looking at a degree of fundraising and additional philanthropic donations to try and support further need for us to be able to do that. Future aspirations. Many of you will be aware of some of the wonderful things that are delivered by what is now FACT, but FACT don't go as far into East Cambs as they used to. They used to reach all across East Cambs, and I can give you an example of a very disabled lady in my own ward in Soham who used to go across to a wonderful place called Snake Hall Farm every 2 to 3 days a week. And that service was suddenly dropped, and she'd got no method of doing that, which actually meant she'd got no way of getting out of the house. So we're trying to look at how we can deal with that. We're also looking at, part of the survey will be to our members, what else training do you want? You know, we can say that we can help you with grant funding, but that's really from our own experiences. But what else is there? We're looking at the possibilities of either being part of East Cambs Parish Forum or actually doing our own, help to get further reach to the people so that all parish councils know what we're doing. And finally, I've gone over volunteer recruitment and management. My wife is a special needs TA in local education, and she's kept in touch with all the children that she's taught through the years. And one of those children bumped into her last week, and he's 22 years old now, but he's at home with mum and he's not aspiring to do anything. And I've had initial conversations about him coming into our office. He loves computers and he's good on the website. We're in the midst of a website redesign at the moment. And I'm saying, well, how about if you give some experience? At least we could give you a reference, which might then help you into a job. That's a kind of hidden benefit of what we're doing as a charity. I'm just going to summarise at the end by saying the staff and the volunteers are absolutely amazing. We had a wonderful AGM last week. Thanks very much for some of you were there. It was really well achieved. And it was really good to see the link between that and the local community. You The NHS are driving us to need more drivers. The gardening service, we could double, but that's typically from April to September. So we've got to be aware of that. We've got a very good trustee board who oversight anything. Very happy to take any questions on behalf of the charity.
I can see Councillor Ambrose Smith. Any other questions? Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Mark. You went so fast, I'm afraid, that I missed.
I was trying to be kind to you.
I know. I just missed something. Could you define active members? I didn't understand what a member was.
Okay, a member of VCAC is somebody who pays a lifetime £10 fee. That's it, right? But then what they do is they get our newsletters. They do, and an active member is typically you might have a village hall user team, or you might have. There's a wonderful thing in Salem which publishes a community newsletter. That entity is an active member. And an active member can be anybody, but it's typically somebody that's looking to either reach out into the volunteering world or onward and into the funding world.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, thank you very much, and thanks for your brevity. I know you've noticed how big our agenda is. Firstly, just to declare an interest, I hadn't realised that Mark was going to touch on it so in such depth, but my father is a volunteer with the gardening service, and that's what I just wanted to touch on, just to highlight the incredible work that this organisation does. And it really is a lifeline for people that need to have a reason to get out of bed sometimes and go and do something, and actually adding huge benefit to those that can't garden anymore or look after their properties. So it's amazing work, and it really, from a first-hand experience, couldn't be more welcomed. So thank you, Mark. The only question I have is, you mentioned on the scope of how much you can do as an organisation because of funding. Would you be able to put something, perhaps however brief or just a sort of blue sky thinking, to the council, so that we could perhaps take it away and look at how we might be able to fund future projects and get some value out and hopefully support some of that extra work you want to do?
I'd be very delighted to do that as it really melds and moves forward. But I'm also very happy to do that through Lewis, who we work with quite closely in terms of that support. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And just if I can just add, I deliberately didn't mention Dad, but to see the difference in your dad since he started volunteering is an amazing reward, not just for us, but also for you, for him and everybody involved. So that's lovely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Webber.
Comment just to say the same, really. Mark knows that we've done quite a lot of work in Littleport. We've got at Littleport Town Council, we've got an older person's worker now. She organises quite a lot of events. Some of Mark's drivers who live in the village actually transport people from one side of the village to the other, which doesn't sound far. Litterport's not that big, but there are people who just cannot get out of their own homes. And it is changing people's lives, and it is those drivers. We need to support those drivers in some way to keep that service going, because it's incredible that, I mean, obviously the hospital side of it is incredibly important, but it's not only that, it's those short journeys that people just can't make. So
if I may, Joe, just as a slight extension to that, the physically getting them to a pensioners lunch or a knit and natter session or whatever it is that the wonderful community has put on, right, is what we deliver. But actually in doing that, we're countering social isolation. And in a fuel crisis and an economy situation that we're in at the moment, it's something we've got to be manifestly aware of and make sure that, we had a wonderful thing. There was some positive negatives during the COVID period where we actually spoke to our neighbours and went after and made sure they were okay and kept checking on people. Well, actually, we do that every day of the week because we do these regular services. But if we could reach more people, and just one other last thing on that, if I may, collective grouping. So if, for instance, I mentioned in there, you may have seen it, I mentioned that we would like to acquire a disability available minibus, because if we could go and pick up 7 or 8 people in Littleport and take them from their homes to point A in one journey, that camaraderie on journey makes it a lot easier for those people to make that journey than getting into somebody's car. So, we're trying new ways. We're thinking about new things, but thank you.
Any other questions? I'd just like to add my thanks. I think it's an extraordinary organisation, and I think your idea of coming to the parish conference isn't is an absolute. We must make sure you are definitely on that so that all parish councils in the district are fully aware of the service. Because that's where you're going to pick up your volunteers, is through the parish council, through that network, and through the warm hubs as well. Make sure that all the warm hubs are briefed of the service that you offer. And in Fordham, for instance, we've got 16 volunteers manning the warm hubs. I'm sure if they were aware of your service, then they might well be able to volunteer on that service as well. People are looking for things to do and ways to contribute and make the world they live, the community they live in, a better place. And this would be ideal.
I don't want to miss an opportunity for a sales point, but if anybody is interested, just pass them my name and contact numbers, please, because you know, a driver is not out of pocket for driving. And that's an important thing. They donate in their time, but they're not out of pocket. And that's a very important thing.
Right, now we move on to presentation. Lost my place, so I don't know where I am. This is for customer services. Thank you very much, Annette.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know us by name, my name is Annette Wade, Customer Services Manager, and I would like to introduce Helen Sarkis, Customer Service Team Leader, who has joined me this evening. Next slide, please, Helen. I thought I would start by telling you how we fit into the organisation and the structure of the team. As you can see from this slide, Customer Services reports to Director, Legal Services. The service is essentially split into two teams. The customer service team, who answer the phones, and you'll see on reception, highlighted in blue, and the digital services team, who are responsible for the website and the administration and development of the council's customer relationship management system, highlighted in green. Although the two teams have very different roles, they do work closely together, and there is a lot of two-way communication. The customer service team use the website and the tools within the customer relationship management system, such as forms, scripts, workflows, and frequently asked questions to resolve customer inquiries at first point of contact, or direct customer inquiries as efficiently as possible so they get a full and prompt response. Because of this, they are in a good position to test new forms, workflows, processes, and scripts, and identify where things are not quite right and could work better, or there is a need for a new frequently asked question, for example. We have recently welcomed our 7th customer service apprentice to the team. Customer service apprenticeships continue to be a positive addition to the service. 5 of the 6 who've qualified so far have gone on to have very successful careers with us here at East Cambs, as have a number of customer service advisors who have progressed within the council, which proves customer service is a good place to start. Before I move on to the next slide, I would just like to mention that the customer service team share our reception with Sanctuary Housing. This acts as a one-stop shop that continues to work well for customers who might want to report with a fault with a Sanctuary property and seek advice on benefits or require other financial support. Next slide, please, Helen. The next 2 slides will tell you more about what we do. I'll start with customer services. Like the website, we recognise that we are the face of the council and how important it is that we are welcoming, professional, customer-focused, knowledgeable, and create a good impression, no matter how people choose to contact us. The amount and breadth of knowledge to fulfil the customer service role is immense. Not only do we need to keep up to speed with all aspects of the council and its trading companies, we can receive contact about all sorts of problems. These can be related to county council issues, utilities, partners, literally anything. People often call us when they don't know who to call. We're here for everyone. This is why, after 6 months intensive hands-on training and specific training for GDPR, safeguarding, dealing with vulnerable customers in difficult situations, each customer advisor has their own training plan that is continuously reviewed and adapted to meet their own personal development and the services needs. As mentioned before, the tools within the CRM, customer relationship management system, tools within the customer relationship management system enable us to resolve as many inquiries at first point of contact, which frees up the back office to get on with the day job. We recognise customers have different needs. By emailing and providing links to people who prefer to use online services, this frees up time for us to concentrate on those who do not have the ability or competence to complete online forms or the tools to access the internet, and those who have more complex inquiries and needs. We have a hearing loop for those who are hard of hearing and a language line to assist those whose first language is not English. Helen is a trained dementia champion and provides in-house training to our staff and other staff within the council as and when requested. We also have interview rooms, which we use if people require privacy or they cannot access a reception counter, for example. When we're not answering the phone, responding to emails or serving customers face-to-face, we have a whole host of admin jobs that we do to support council services, East Cambs Street Scene, East Cambs Trading Company and Anglia Revenues Partnership. Examples range from administering the annual additional green waste renewals and business and market parking permits to processing checks, updating the TV screens in reception and to assisting with mail outs. In addition to this, we are always ready to support national emergencies. We are currently supporting the housing team with their responsibilities for Homes for Ukraine and played a significant role in helping the shielded and most vulnerable during COVID, as well as administering test and trace payments. We listen and learn and seek feedback to improve the customer experience. One thing's for sure, that if something is wrong, customer service and the comms team will probably be the first to know about it. Depending on what this is, we feed this back and where possible, work with the service to correct or improve this. We have our own monthly customer service team meeting where we discuss what is coming up, what has gone well and not so well. And for the not so well, we think about how this could have gone better, could have been improved and feed back to the relevant service. It may be a letter that is not clear, a CRM form needs another field, a process needs a tweak or two. A small change can make a big difference. We meet monthly with East Cambs Street Scene to do the same. We invite other services to our team meetings to ensure we fully understand the service and how the team can positively support the service and feedback the customer experience. We survey customers. We are currently finalising a customer survey and discussing the best way of distributing this to our residents to ensure as many people as possible have the opportunity to tell us how we're doing. The final aim on this slide is to raise the profile of the customer throughout the organisation and ensure that our plans, decisions, actions and overall culture has the customer at the heart of everything we do. I keep my ear to the ground and ensure there's a customer representative at all relevant project meetings. I'm a member of the Council's tactical team for national emergencies. We attend Anglia Revenue Partnership strategic, tactical and buddy meetings where we discuss revs and bends, performance, changes to services, as well as the customer service experience and improvements. We try to be ahead of the game, read all service plans, meet with service leads about what is coming up, and we provide feedback and customer insight to service leads and discuss potential service improvements. Prior to COVID, we also had a service champion role. Each service would have their own customer service advisor champion who would spend a morning or afternoon once every 2 to 3 weeks within the back office team, getting a better insight and understanding of the service, which they would then bring back and share with the rest of the team. In exchange, we would update the service with any customer feedback and be their go-to person if the service needed additional support or wanted to disseminate service information. This is something Helen and I are looking forward to restart again in the near future. Next slide, please. Moving on to the digital services team, this is the team that looks after the council's website and the customer relationship management system. One of their responsibilities is to develop a user-friendly transactional website that provides up-to-date and relevant information and access to services 24/7. The council's website, eastcambs.gov.uk, last had a facelift in 2014. It has in excess of 6,500 pages and 2,500 documents. Each service is responsible for their own pages and are required to ensure that information and documents are accurate, relevant and kept up to date. Some services have their own web updaters. Others pass information directly to our team to add or amend. As well as updating web pages, the digital service team work with departments to discuss the layout and best way to present and develop new information pages, provide guidance and training on content management. They also review all content before it is published to ensure it meets accessibility standards and their own web governance guidelines. This ensures consistency in terms of the layout and the look and feel throughout the website. Develop and maintain the council's customer relationship management system to deliver efficiencies to the customer and the council and streamline work processes. The council's customer relationship management system and contact centre was introduced as part of the council's commitment to improve access to services for residents and other customers. All contact that goes through customer services or via the online forms is recorded in the council's customer relationship management system, either by completing a form or recording against a frequently asked question or a call counter, as well as a tool that supports customer services to resolve as many inquiries at first point of contact. The CRM also provides valuable data such as contact volumes and details as to why people are contacting us, both of which can be used to inform service delivery improvements and resource planning. Additionally, it provides the website's bin collection solution, where residents can find out their waste collection dates by just entering the postcode or street name. This is easy to do and is heavily used by residents, and I'm sure prevents a large volume of calls. The digital team work with all services to develop new and improve and amend customer and online forms as and when workflows are reviewed and services change. Some are simple, some are intelligent. For example, dependent on what options are selected, it will advise customers of their eligibility to make an application, calculate what fees they need to pay, or advise them that they may have put the wrong bin out. The team also provide monthly service reports to ECSS and quarterly and ad hoc reports to other service leads and management team. It is a legal requirement that all web pages and documents published on our website are fully accessible. It is a misconception that accessibility is all about disability. It is about making sure our website can be used by as many people as possible. For example, those using different environments and devices, and those from different cultural backgrounds, non-English speakers, as well as those with impaired abilities. We're extremely fortunate to have a product called Silktide, which continually crawls and tests our website and identifies areas that need improvement. I'm pleased to say that our compliance score is hovering around 94 to 96%, which is considered an excellent score. In addition to this, the website functionality and user experience score is 97%. That said, we will not be complacent and the challenge is on to reach the full 100%. The final objective on my digital slide is to seek feedback and learn. Use data about demand for our services, including understanding and addressing failure demand, to understand customer needs and experiences to inform and drive service improvements. You'll have noticed this is a common theme throughout my presentation. We are always looking to understand the customer service experience and work with services to make improvements where we can. We have a feedback form on our website, which is frequently monitored so that a fault is quickly resolved and that comments are fed back to the relevant service. There is a 5-star rating at the end of all our online forms, which the customer can complete. This tells the team which forms are working well and which need reviewing and amending. We want the experience of those using our website and our online service to be a positive one. And as more and more people prefer to do their business online, it is essential that we meet customer expectations. With regard to failure demand, this is when we look at the data held within the customer relationship management system and identify whether the reason for contacting the council is related to a service failure. This could be a missed bin, a letter sent to residents that was not clear, so generated calls, a customer being asked to call an officer, who then go straight out on site. We use the data to form part of our annual discussion with each service to work smarter and reduce unnecessary contact. Next slide. I thought I would finish my presentation with some numbers. Here are some customer service statistics for the current financial year, 1st of April through to the 31st of October. This slide shows we have received 38,127 calls to our main number, 01353 665555, and we've answered 36,766 of them, which equates to 96.4%. We've dealt with 5,904 visitors and 3,705 emails, helped 146 customers make an application for financial assistance, either over the phone or face-to-face, and completed 484 building control and planning copy requests, 72% of which have been completed in less than 24 hours. Can I just say a copy request isn't usually just one document, it could be a couple of files worth. Copy requests is another one of the admin tasks we do to support the services. This is a very good example where transferring this part of the service to us from a very busy planning service improved the customer service experience no end. It reduced the turnaround time for the customer from a maximum of 28 working days to a maximum of 5, which in turn reduced call volumes and freed up resource in the back office. A win-win, or should I say a win-win-win. Next slide, please. This slide details the top 20 views in Q1 and 2 of this year. The 10 highlighted in the sort of peachy beige colour, the homepage, the current planning applications, waste collection dates, pay your council, planning applications, etc., appear in both quarters. I should imagine these pages will always be in the top 20 or thereabouts. My last slide provides website user analytics based on the last quarter. The left-hand side of the screen shows the age range of the people using our website. As you can see, the 25 to 54-year-olds, shown in blue, orange and grey, are using the website the most, and the distribution throughout this age group is quite evenly spread. This is followed by the 18 to 24s and those aged 55 to 64, with the over 65-year-olds using the website the least. The right-hand side of the screen shows the device used by the customer to access the website. And you can see that in the last quarter, the mobile was the most common choice of device, followed by the desktop. Next slide, please. Before I move on to questions, I would just like to say thank you for listening and hope that I've given you a greater understanding of the role of the customer service team and how we fit into the organisation. And also to say a huge thank you to my teams who work so hard day in and day out to provide a positive customer service experience to the residents and others who contact us for help and advice. They do a fantastic job. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Annette. Do we have any questions from members? All hands going up everywhere. Councillor Ambrose Smith, Councillor Every, Councillor Inskip from National.
Thank you, Chair. And then I've got 2 points, one question and one feedback. She did ask for feedback.
Yes.
The question is, how long is an apprenticeship?
Well, it's a maximum of 2 years. A lot of them do qualify quicker than that, usually about a year, I would say.
Oh, lovely. That's very positive. On the feedback, I have something to do with ARP and have done for 12 years now. And I will say that they are very good. ARP are very good. They are one of the largest benefit collecting businesses, I suppose we call them, in the country. Not top 3 anyway. But I will say, without the service and the backup that you give them, they wouldn't be there. I know what you give them over the years and all the just do this and just do that, which you have to do at your meetings. So I'd like to thank you for that, for keeping ARP right at the top. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Annette, for the service that you and your advisors provide. I'd just like to ask not a personal question about myself, but how you deal with the individual person. You've taken on, or the council has taken on a lot more advice to people who would have gone elsewhere in the past. And I'd just like you to explain to me how you would handle me coming in tears. I've been made redundant. And my husband's just left me and I'm so distraught. I don't know what to do next. Tell me how and I'm crying. So tell me how you would deal with that, or how your advisors would deal with that, because I think that's what the general public want to know, that that's how you're going to deal with them if they have the nerve to come and talk to you in the first place.
I think the first thing is obviously recognise how upset you were, and we'd take you off into an interview room so that we could talk to you on a one-to-one basis in a confidential area. And we'd obviously listen. I think we do a lot of active listening, and then reassure you that we are here to help and help us as well as we can. Obviously, our housing team, we would then book you in with our housing team, who would then offer that advice to you, but we would sit with you and give you a lot of empathy and understanding.
I knew that would be your answer. Absolutely. I'm just wondering, how we can encourage our general public to think that they can get that kind of support, which they absolutely can, by coming into a council office. That's the fear that I have, that because it's a council office, it seems like a government department. It's not just for somebody who's really struggling. So do you do any marketing out there that persuades people to come in and know that they will be treated in the patient way that you've just described?
I think we do. And I also think the housing team also promote that as well. So I would like to think that we are approachable, but that if there's more we can do, I'm certainly happy to do that.
Do you have any case studies you'd like to share with people who've actually had really good experiences? That's what I was suggesting that might go on the website.
I'm sure we can find some.
Yeah, a couple of questions. The first one, so I'll ask the first one and then let you respond on that, and then I'll move on to my second one. So went back a couple of slides, you showed just the volume of emails and face-to-face, so interviews and phone calls you have. Obviously, one of the things that whether it's where residents are ringing up the council or any other sort of service or company, a lot depends on the sort of let's say their first impressions. Do we have any sort of targets for how long people should wait before they get an answer on the phone, or how long it will be before they see a reply on an email or a face-to-face interview? And do we measure how long it actually takes?
Yes, in answer to those questions, we have both of those things. We know how long it takes to answer. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm really sorry how many seconds that is. I think it's at 30 seconds, but I will check for you. And we also have service standards, which tells us how many days we are to answer an email. We answer ours within 24 hours, but I believe it is 2 days, but I will check that for you.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be useful if that could be sort of circulated afterwards to members. That would just be useful information to understand, and also sometimes to share with the public when they ask questions. The other one is moving to the data you showed on the websites. Do we know how people actually get to our web pages? Do you have data on that in terms of have they come from search engines, from social media? They've just typed in the URL?
Yes, I do have that. I didn't include it tonight, but I do have that information. I can share that with you as well.
And in terms of when they've got there, do we know how long they actually generally spend on the website, and how easy whether they move around from page to page, and therefore gives us an idea of how useful they find it in terms of.
I looked at our bounce rate, which is where people go and you can see if they go straight off again, and it was 36% in October, which I believe is good. I understand anything under 40 is good. So I'm quite pleased that they do actually stay on our pages and find them useful.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be grateful, Annette, if you could circulate all that information with all members of the committee. I'd be grateful. Thank you very much. It's Councillor Trapp and then Councillor Whelan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm glad you're doing such a very good job. I do actually have a slight, I think you touched upon it in your presentation. Do you actually go out to see people where they are have disability or have problems?
You mean in reception? When people come into reception? Yes, we do.
Right, okay. Because I do know someone who took 1.5 years for him to get something to do with an improvement to his house, which was necessary. And that he felt that he could do it much better if he had someone there rather than filling lots of forms.
Oh, do you mean actually in reception or going to the person's house? Sorry.
Going to the person's house.
No, we don't in customer services, but the officer within the department, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but I'm not sure if they go out, I'll be honest.
Have you thought about that or not? Particularly for the vulnerable who are digitally challenged, we say.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's through you, Chair. I think that's an individual service manager's responsibility rather than customer services. So that sounds like it's the Disabled Facilities Grant Assistance there. So the question would need to be posed to Liz Knox as the service manager. So I would suggest that if you've got a specific question like that in writing, that perhaps you put it to the service manager. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I noticed that you obviously got some vacancies and also that one of the boxes said there was a vacancy.
We
in
have a
that.
vacancy.
Yeah, and also, obviously, some of yours are only working, they're working part-time. How close are you actually now to fulfilling that or filling that vacancy?
I'll be honest, we've struggled to fill the vacancy in the digital services team for the last 6 months. We did fill it, but unfortunately that person has moved on. So it's left a vacancy again. That's only recently happened. We're due to advertise that vacancy after Christmas. We have recruited successfully to the 1-year fixed term post,
Yeah.
and I'm quite positive
Yeah.
about the web team at the moment.
Yeah, obviously, I'm more concerned, the more queries you're gonna probably getting in over the winter and the next few months will obviously put a strain on the staff that are covering that. That's all.
Thank you.
Councillor Whelan, any other questions? Oh, Councillor Schumann. Oh, Councillor Webber and then Councillor Schumann.
Actually, one of my questions was around staffing, because quite some time ago, when you set up, I used to be the champion for customer services, and when you know, sort of a victim of your own success, because some of your staff do go on into other careers within the council because they've got those links now, and it was a case of I remember you losing staff and you know, because they were good and they were applying for the jobs, and you were sort of always on that catch up, and we sort of agreed at that time you'd have sort of a floating member of staff. I think John, we did it before. So I'm just checking, are you still, obviously things have changed with COVID, and I know there's been lots of things that you know, you've not got those links with the back office in quite the same way at the moment, but are you still struggling with that, or is so you're always playing catch up, or do you have enough staff? I suppose that's what I'm saying, because I know you cover a huge amount of work.
Yes, we do. We were given 2 extra staff, and
Brilliant.
that's still maintained. I mean, one staff, we've given 14 hours of it to the online team. The lady went on maternity leave and has come back and helping us out there. And no, we still do have that capacity, and it has been very stable for the last couple of years, actually.
Yeah, I know what a struggle it was for you. I mean, it was so
It was.
difficult, wasn't it, trying to play catch up? But it is, I think it is brilliant. It is a way of growing your own by them being in customer services, having those links with the back offices, and moving on. I know it was great for you, but it's great to see your team move on and do well. Thank you.
It's nice to see people develop.
Councillor Schumann and then Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Annette, thank you. Firstly, when Councillor Whelan was asking about vacancies, I thought you were going to volunteer. That would be wonderful. It's a thankless task, I know. So I certainly wouldn't be able to do it. So congratulations to you and the team who have to face all kinds of challenges that come through that door, and people usually at their most vulnerable. So well done. The calls are just staggering. I just did some very quick maths, and 30,000 calls. If each one was 1 minute, that's 4 months on an average 40-hour week that you're on the phone for non-stop. I mean, that's just incredible to think that kind of volume. So that leads on to the question, I guess, which is, if possible, I don't know, I may have seen it in previous years, you may still do it, but if we could get an indication of the cost of coming through the different ways of communicating with the council, i.e. through calling, through visiting, through using our online services, because I think there's an opportunity here for us to do a comms piece of work around how the public can help their council as well as the council helping them, helping them, particularly with the waste service as we move to sort of digital reporting, and we know we already have those options. When we send out our dates for our blue and green bins, perhaps we could have a very clear indication of how you report the problems rather than calling through to our customer service team all the time, because fielding that obviously comes at a cost, not only the actual cost, but the time that it takes you guys to deal with something like that. So perhaps we could look to say, if you call us, it costs us this. If you come in, it costs us this. So just think about how you might engage with us in future. Check our website out first. Things like that. Simple messaging. Thank you.
Thank you.
A comment, really. I do think that we should make more of the fact that our residents are welcome if they are in a problem, especially as some of the circumstances alluded to by Councillor Every, that they are welcome to come into the council. I spent more than 40 years of my working life dealing with customers face to face, and many times with people with serious money problems, deaths. And so often when you communicate with someone, a customer, a client, whatever you call them, it's trying to find out what they are not saying, because often what they say isn't what the problem they have. And it's that facial recognition and things of that nature. Thank you.
I'd just like to, in further, any other questions? I'd just like to add my thanks. I mean, I have to say, every time I phone up to speak to somebody, they're always chirpy, always lovely to talk to, and it makes such a difference when you hear a friendly voice at the end of the phone. So if you could pass on my thanks to your wonderful team. Thank you very much.
Will do. Thank you very much.
If Nigel, you'd like to come and take a seat, and we'll move on to agenda item number 8. To you, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So these are the financial statements for East Cambridge Street Scene for the year end 31 March 2022. I'll just walk members through the documents, if that's okay. Pages 1 and 2, Director's Report. This states the Director's responsibilities with respect to these statements, namely that they must only approve these accounts if they're satisfied that they give a true and fair view of the affairs of the company, and in doing so have selected appropriate accounting policies, applied them consistently, and that any judgments or estimates are reasonable and prudent, and that the accounts are prepared on a going concern basis only if it's correct to do so. And finally, that all relevant audit information has been provided to the auditors. Turning to pages 3 to 5, that's the auditor's report from Price Bailey. They confirm that they've conducted an audit on the statements and the notes that accompany the statements, and that they do in fact give a true and fair view of the company's affairs as at March 31, 2022, and they've been properly prepared according to the latest regulations. Page 4 has more standard information on Price Bailey's audit, and that there's nothing they're required to bring to the director's attention in respect to the statements. Page 5 talks about the methodology of the audit. So page 6 is the profit and loss account. 2022 and the comparison with 2021. The comparison for 2021 has been restated to correctly reflect some revenue that's received when Street Scene sells recycled materials. Previously, we'd offset that against the cost of recycling those materials, but the auditors suggested that that ought to be counted as revenue, and the cost is in the cost area. The net effect of that was to increase the revenue by 173,000, but also the costs increased by the same amount, so there was no change to the profit for the year. 2022 revenues were up slightly as the value of those recycled materials rose from an average of just under £20 a tonne to just under £40 a tonne in 2022. In terms of costs, direct costs were up slightly by about 38,000. Admin costs, 206,000 higher. The main differences in that area, 82,000 extra on motor running costs. So we had repairs, which were 51k higher because of the age of the fleet. Although to be fair, 13,000 of that actually related to the previous year, but the costs came in late. Fuel costs were 40,000 higher. The price that the company paid for diesel increased from 92p a litre in 2021 up to £1.14 a litre in 21-22, and the company buys about 21,000 litres a month to keep the fleet on the road, so that has obviously a large impact. It also spent 35,000 on additional hired vehicles on a temporary basis to cover the vehicles that are in need of repair. There was 47k on campaigns and events throughout the year. A large proportion of that was advising residents of the round configuration plans. This was mostly procured from ECDC's in-house reprographics team. So that left an overall net profit of 8,000 for the year. On page 7, we have the balance sheet. Aside from the increase in equity following this year's profit, the only other major difference really was the increase in cash of about 185,000, which was caused simply by the timing of the payment of suppliers being shortly after the year end this year, whereas in the previous year it was shortly before the year end. So we have a cumulative profit from the company over 4 years of about 17,000. On page 8, that confirms that the only change in equity is profit. Page 9, cash flow statement, which reconciles the opening cash of 179,000 with the closing cash of 364. And then page 10 through 20 are all the notes that accompany the accounts that try and go into more detail behind the numbers on the P&L on the balance sheet, and try and aid the reader of the accounts. The main ones for me, 1.2 on page 10, which confirms the accounts been prepared on a going concern basis. Note 15 on page 19 has more detail on cash flow, showing there the major difference between being the change in creditors. And finally, note 18 on page 20 just gives an update on a serious RTA, which is now moving to a conclusion. ECS says it's fully insured on it, but we're obliged to note it as a potential liability. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. We had some questions submitted by councillor Inskip. Are you content with the responses to those questions, councillor Inskip?
Got a couple of.
I was going to. Have you got some follow-ups?
Yes. So just actually starting with the last one, just trying to understand the costs on, I guess it's equipment hire, or effectively this radio mass. So that wasn't accounted for. So were we being invoiced? Were we paying for that, or how did we find out that that should be included?
Yeah, so we're invoiced for that by from G's in Barway, and when they asked for the invoice, it became apparent that we hadn't paid for the previous year's charge as well, so I had to come into this year. Okay.
On the repairs, so I understand, the aging the fleet and those repairs going up. Can you just put the 51,000 in context? So how much? So it's 51,000 extra. How much in last year did we spend overall?
It's about 30k per month in repairs. So what's that? 360k.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess similarly with the motor hire, so when we're bringing in vehicles on a temporary basis, there's an increase there, but what's that?
Again, at the moment it's about 8k a month, about 4k a vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, councillor Inskip? I can see you writing away. Sorry.
No, I was just jotting down the answers before no further questions. No.
Thank you. Sorry, do we have any further questions for Nigel? No, thank you very much then in that case. Councillor Hill, John, if you'd like to stay where you are, and I think Sean is going to come up and join you for agenda item 9A and B. Yes. Perhaps, John, while Sean's joining you, you could update us on the action plan, please.
Thank you, Chair. As members will know, I've written to all members at the end of last month, early this month, and today to parish council, summarising the final agreement and the final settlement. Obviously, that's there for members, and if there are any further questions, I'm happy to respond to those. But I think worth reiterating, because I know it's an issue that's been raised in the committee and by you personally, I think it's worth noting there are now a number of both formal and informal mechanisms by which the employer and the employee can engage over the forthcoming months and years, and I think that's important. And I think the standardisation of that affords Isabel and Sean an opportunity to have ongoing dialogue with staff and their representatives. just to say, and obviously I'm sure Isabel's been introduced to committee, Isabel's will be able to take forward now the implementation of the settlement and also the programme of vehicle replacement and some necessary management restructuring. So I think that updates members where we are with the action plan. And with your permission, Chair, I'd like to stay here with Sean for items.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been brought to my attention that we should have noted agenda item number 8. Are we all happy to note that? Thank you. Apologies. Sean, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I just want to give you some notes. This is a report for noting for the Q1, Q2 performance report. I just want to run through some of the points within these reports. So Q1 saw the implementation of the round changes, and this brought in its own problems, which has challenged DCSS like nothing we've ever experienced before. We're 6 months into these round changes now, and during Q2, we have seen a continued rise in the level of performance compared with Q1. This has been challenging, but we can see that there have been positive steps forwards, with increases in performance on collections from 99.26% in Q1, and there's an increase to 99.64% in Q2. We've also increased our performance on completions of bin deliveries from 38% in Q1 to 72% in Q2. And we've had a reduction in miscollections, almost half, from 6,617 in Q1 to 3,158 in Q2. This has helped increase the overall performance of the service by 25%, and that's up from 33% in Q1 to 58% in Q2. We've achieved a 60.1% recycling rate for Q1, and this is up from 49.3% for the previous quarter. And provisionally, our recycling rate for 2021 and 2022 is 56.1. Compared with Q1 last year, we're also slightly up on this quarter from 59.9%. There still remains some challenging operational circumstances, such as sickness and vehicle theft. But with closer monitoring of the systematic absences, we've seen a reduction in lost hours from 2,471 in the first quarter to 1,883 in the second quarter. And with the installation of new fencing and CCTV monitoring, we're hoping that then reduces the break-ins and vehicle theft sort of going forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Again, Councillor, in questions submitted by both Councillor Inskip and Councillor Trapp. Are you content with the written responses? And I'm sure you want to follow up.
I've got a few follow-ups.
Councillor Trapp, have you got any follow-ups?
Yeah.
Let's start with you, Councillor.
Yeah, so I asked about sort of staff turnover and the figures that are being presented there. That doesn't, well, at least on a quarterly level, there doesn't seem to be let's say a real reduction. I guess the key question I'm interested in is, what do we think is a reasonable figure that we should be aiming for? And I guess I'm thinking about maybe presenting that as a percentage of the overall staff, and how far. Well, I would suggest we're probably above that. How far are we above that? And do we expect that the actions that I know we're in the update in the action plan will help reduce that? And I'm just, I guess, adding on to that, are we seeing any early signs that is working?
To assist Sean, I think the baseline is probably to make a comparison between the turnover at the council, which I don't have at the moment.
Yeah.
Very happy to do that base, and I think that will help Sean. Were there any other points you wanted to raise in terms of responding to Councillor Inskip?
Thank you. No, I do think with what's been implemented that retention of staff will be a lot better. But looking at previous, we've staffed with drivers as well to give us that resilience going forward, so we don't sort of slip back and have the problems we had.
Okay, yeah, I'm not. I guess what I was looking for is trying to, so if we are comparing it, for example, with the council staff turnover, what roughly as a percentage, annual percentages is that?
I think I indicated,
Yeah.
Chair, that I'm very happy to find that figure and
Oh,
do the
okay.
comparator. What I would say is the settlement is very much designed to address this particular issue. And members will also note there are regular quarterly meetings which are now standardised and formalised in the agreement specifically to look at recruitment and retention, because as Councillor Skip has indicated also, it's a matter that the union representatives are concerned with, and to see whether the settlement achieves what we seek to be able to do in terms of recruitment protection. So I'll share that information with all, and obviously you'll be getting regular updates on that.
Thank you, John. Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
thank you. And I think that would be a useful figure to include in the quarterly updates,
think we
because
will.
hopefully we'll
Thank
start
you.
to see the impact of those changes. The one I struggle with is this. Well, there's two things together here. I asked a question about trying to understand this percentage of collections that are not made on the scheduled day, and if I understand correctly, that sort of, so you look at all of the collections you're supposed to make across the quarter and look at how many of those were missed. Is that based on, let's say, reported misses? So, because I know I have a question later on about the number of missed collections that were reported, which is about 0.66%, and then I'm told about 0.74% is the overall figure. So I'm trying to understand what the metric is, because what I'm conscious of when we were having major problems and there were a lot of missed collections, a lot of people were just, if the whole street was missed, they knew there was no point in just being the next person to ring up and report the missed collection. So are we basing on, let's say, on those periods during the quarter that the first report is on, based on reported missed collections, or is it on, let's say, all of the collections we know weren't achieved at the time?
The misses are based on reported. So if a collection's reported as missed, it comes through as a CRM, and then we pick up from there and go and collect it. It might be a case, if we get there, there may be a couple more that haven't been reported, but are also collected. Is that
Okay, so that makes, I can understand that when things are running smoothly, but I guess that's why I couldn't quite match the figures for that quarter after that's April, May, June, when we know we had much more major misses. But so if the metrics on reported ones, it isn't going to capture those people who are, on inundating the switchboard or the website with they missed mine as well, because they know that street or even that village was missed. Okay, let me just carry on and see what else I've got. So yes, on the Facebook social media posts, I was specifically asking about the ECSS page. Are those figures for the ECSS page or for the district council page? Because when I look at, I looked when I got the questions, and I could only see a couple of posts in that quarter.
So,
there weren't, but there were more on the district council page.
yeah, so these are for ECSS. These are the posts that are relating to disruptions for the
Right.
service.
Yeah. But they were, they were large, but those were, but those, I think those were, if I look back, those were done on the East Cambs page, which probably is the better one to do, because there aren't actually that many people who are following the ECSS page at the moment. But yeah, okay. And thank you for circulating the executive summary of the consultants report. Can you just give me an idea of, so on the, I asked about what has been done to understand the dramatic increase in both short and long-term staff absence in the quarter that the first report refers to. So the answer is systematic issues are now being addressed. Can you give me an idea of what you mean by a systematic issue? What an example is of that?
So systematic issues, we look at across the board. If we're seeing patterns with continual absences, they're being addressed, and sickness absence as well. So closer monitoring means that we're taking a lot more time to see who's off and then deal with it, that way. They're not just leaving it to carry on and carry on. So it is being dealt with, and it seems to be reducing as well.
Okay, then on the first report, that's the last of my questions. I'll defer to Councillor Trapp.
Your pardon, Councillor Trapp. Sorry,
I was waiting for your go.
You go, John, you go. We have 23 items on the agenda.
On your.
With 23 items on the agenda, John, if we don't want this to run into tomorrow, we need to.
No.
We need to move with alacrity.
I think the first one has been answered. So it's only those which are reported as success. I mean, first of all, it's great service. I mean, 99.2% is fantastic, is really great, actually. So the second item there is successful completion of bin delivery. Is that just putting new bins in? So that's not a major issue, is it?
No, we give ourselves 10 working days. So that's just on deliveries of new bins. So
what I'm really wondering about is the overall performance of the service calculated. I would have thought that the collections completed successfully would have a very major impact on this, 99.2.6%. Whereas I think you say the overall performance of the service is somewhere around 30. I don't know, I've got a whole punch through the 30%. I can't remember what the value is, but it's something like 30. So what are you lumping in data not available plus 38% plus 99 into that figure, or how? I would have thought the major thing there is how well the major one is 99.26%.
So the 99, the big figure there, 99.37% or 2% is collections successfully completed.
Yeah.
So that just gives you the percentage for how many collections were successfully completed. So during the first quarter, we had over 1 million collections.
I understand that figure. I'm just wondering about how the overall performance of the service is calculated.
Okay, so the overall performance of the service is calculated on a lot of other factors. We do it on spillage, missed bins, assisted collections. So once CRMs are raised, if they're not shut down in time, we might have been out and collected the bin, we might have delivered the bin. If we haven't closed down that paperwork, that percentage then gets lowered.
Okay, so could that be an explanation? Could one have that explanation in paper, please?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Trapp, if I could just say, I have had this explanation given to me at least 3 times, and I'm still bewildered by it, I have to tell you.
But you're the chair.
And it's still unbelievably confusing. I believe that Sean and Annette are going to get their heads together to try and find a better way. Because I mean, all it takes is for the driver to, Sean was explaining to me, to be given a note, take it in his lorry, do what he has to do. If he forgets to bring it in, then it goes on for another day. So it just makes the percentage look worse than it actually is. From what I understand, at the sharp end, the customers that really, are being affected by it, they're getting a terrific service. But because of the mechanics of the reporting, which seems to me personally to be a bit cumbersome and unwieldy, and I think that's the system that I think we'll be looking at to improve so that the percentages make more sense and I'll give a fairer reflection of how the service is working.
Thank you, because I think that you have 38% for something is just ludicrous, actually. Well, bizarre might be a better word than ludicrous. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Sean, for answering my question at the 11th hour. This is about recycling data for residents. You've said here that the data usually comes in from Amy later at a later date. We have here two quarterly reports, so that's 6 months already. When do these figures come in? Is one question. Is it annually or and what is the nature of the data? Because it'd be good to be able to report to our residents and say, this is the success of their recycling efforts or whatever. Thank you.
So the data we get for the recycling rate comes straight from Amy. So we get that, they give us that when they sort of analyze it themselves. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's later. We don't really have a time frame with it, unfortunately. Oh, we do get it quarterly, but not in time for the reports. That's the problem. But when this second quarter's figure does come through, we will put it out and give it to the committee ourselves.
I wonder, Sean, if you could circulate that to all members when you do get it through from Amy on this occasion, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Are we all content to note the contents of 9A? And we can move then on to 9B. Yeah. Super. Thank you very much, Sean. Don't move. Councillor Inskip had submitted questions on 9B. Do you have any follow-up questions?
I do. Actually, one of them is just picking up, because I'm not sure we completely addressed Councillor Tremarco's issue, because in the 9A, it says that the recycling percentage for that quarter is going to be in this report. This report doesn't have that figure. So I know this report also says it doesn't have the figure for this previous quarter, but we seem to be 2 quarters out rather than just 1 quarter out. Do we know what the Q1 percentage was?
Yes, so the recycling rate for quarter 1
59%
was a 60, yeah.
59%. It's on page 2, 9B.
Okay.
It's
No,
so
it's not. I lied. It's a complete lie. It says data not available. You're quite right.
the quarter 1 recycling rate is 60.1%.
But it should have been in this report.
I thought it wasn't. Oh, sorry, if that's my fault. Okay, well, that is the report.
Okay, my next question, just.
Sorry, Councillor Inskip, there's a lady there's got the answer. So what you're saying is it should have been in this report, but was. Yeah, but quarter 1 should have been in this report. Am I missing? It's just been missed off.
Through you, Chair, I think it was just a bit missed off in this
Yes.
report, and they've just confirmed what the figure is. Thank you.
Okay, my next question was just because the reason I asked it, because although the report didn't mention black bags, looking back, normally it's in the quarter the report covers that we. So normally, if I look back over previous years, it's normally around September we distribute black bags. I know the answer in the meantime, because I saw the social media post, I think it was on Friday, that bags are finally going out now. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what the problem was? Because you know, it's something that a lot of residents are asking us about, because we're 2, maybe 3 months late by the time all of the bags go out. People have run out of their previous allocation. Can you explain a little bit more about what the delays were this time around?
Yes, so our black bags were ordered and we were given a delivery date of September, beginning of September. Unfortunately, they come back to us and said we cannot deliver on that date. There was issues with the port, which they said they'd resolved. Then they've come back again and delayed the delivery date. We finally got them, as I say, last Friday, and started delivery straight away. I mean, I put resources in place ready to go. We knew that it was being pushed back, unfortunately. So now they're in place. We've started to roll them out.
Beg your pardon, I haven't got my microphone. Are you happy with your written response? And do we have any other questions for Sean on item 9B? Are we all happy to note then in that case?
Chair, I think we've done questions, but I think
Oh,
I'd like to have a
sorry,
bit of a
do beg-
discussion on the report.
Do beg your pardon. We will now move to the debate section, although this is just for noting.
Yeah, I realise this is just for noting, and I think at the last meeting that happened, obviously that we were in the thick of the issues. I won't go over again whether whose action plan was the right one we should have, but I'm glad to see that at least all of the points I highlighted at the time have been addressed. Because clearly this is, there are some things that people just expect to happen. They expect to be able to put their bin out each week and it to get collected. And clearly we had some huge problems earlier in the year. And I was looking back at when people first started to raise questions with me, and maybe we had the early signs of things happening, and that was in September of last year, and then obviously we had the whistleblower story in the Ely Standards, and I know this group we had a briefing with officers that didn't entirely satisfy us, and we've had lots of concerns. Then we had the suspension over Christmas. I do very much hope that the measures that have gone in now are going to be successful, because I think we do need to get back to just getting the basic services right. I've got no complaint with the steps that have now been taken, because those match pretty much what I was suggesting ought to happen when I sort of emailed the chief executive on the 7th of June last year. I do think we need to make sure that that we've got also the right mechanisms in place, that if things do start to go wrong again, we can catch it early. Because I think one of my concerns is, whilst we have all of these steps now, we've had a long period of, let's say, the service getting worse and a long period of recovery. And I would hope that we can look at monitoring that more closely and trying to capture that earlier, if we ever do get into that situation again. I very much hope we don't find ourselves there, but I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of.
Councillor Inskip, Councillor Trapp, and then Councillor Schumann, and then I will sum up.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's very good that there has been a review of the services and it's come out very positive. Just one little thing, under 4F, what is a residual property? Is that a residential property?
Councillor Trapp, we're in debate at this stage, not officers for questions for officers.
Oh, all right, well, okay, well, it's the residual.
Perhaps if they could, we'll take it away and they'll notify you. Thank you. Councillor Schumann.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess we should perhaps look for the costume for Michael the Recycler, and Councillor Inskip could wear it as the saviour of our waste service. But on a more serious note, I was pleased to have a report from the Waste Service, the brilliant team, through our Chief Executive, to address any issues that were highlighted. These were national issues faced up and down the country, and specifically a perfect storm of issues faced in East Cambridgeshire. And despite those, we continue to offer a fantastic service. Yes, there were challenges, but yes, they were addressed with absolute immediacy and far beyond, much before Councillor Inskip's input, or any other councillors actually, because we have put a brilliant team in place and they react to issues when they arise. So I'm delighted that we've addressed those and will continue to address those, and delighted to note the report and the progress being made. Thank you, Chairman.
I would just like to say that the service is back to how it was. The figures are not accurate in the fact that they don't reflect what the customers are getting. They're getting the same service that they had before the round configuration. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. Harking back to how wonderful your ideas were, Councillor Inskip, back in June, when all of your suggestions were already being undertaken, is quite frankly self-serving and actually not useful or constructive to this committee. The small waste team are absolutely magnificent. They do a fantastic job day in, day out. Crews, drivers, loaders, office staff, everybody worked tirelessly to deliver the best possible service for this district. And I see them in my village. They are cheerful, happy. I don't get complaints. I just get everybody telling me how wonderful they are. And it's a shame, Councillor Inskip, that you can't find it in yourself to acknowledge how wonderful the crews are, how hard they work, instead of just trying to talk about what possibly might go wrong. The sky might fall in, who knows? But let's be positive. They are a fantastic team doing a job that most people wouldn't do. Most people wouldn't do it, but they do it cheerfully, reliably, and they do a fantastic job. So can we please just acknowledge that? Thank you very much.
Point of personal explanation, Chair. I've never at once criticised the staff. What I was concerned about were low morale issues that were brushed aside last year. And I think I'm glad now that those issues are being tackled. But to say that the issues that I raised were already being addressed, let's just take one. One suggestion I made was that we need to bring in contractors to try to catch up on the rounds, because we could never do that with our own crews who are already overloaded. I made that suggestion on the 7th of June. The first time we used contractors was on the 13th of June.
I believe I'm right in saying, Sean, that the contact had already been made at least 2 weeks before you made the suggestion, and it took that long for Country Star to be able to get their crew and an agreement to be put into place. Would that be correct, John and Sean?
But Sean, I think in reality, bringing in external resources takes some time to arrange. I don't know what the exact dates were, but that it takes some time to put into place. The day, I don't know the dates that happened, but I think it will be reasonable to assume that there is a leading period, and it was the right thing to do at the time, and our focus was on doing the right things, and they may well have been informed by other members, but those are the right things to do. And in fact, it's proven, hasn't it, Chair, that it was a very temporary fix and doesn't provide us a long-term resilience as set out in the executive summary.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your explanation. Are we happy to note the contents of agenda item 9B? Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 10, which is young Anne. Thank you, Anne, for waiting so patiently. Away.
The 2021-22 year-end report. Operational services finished the year at 321,636 under budget for revenue, and capital £2,840,544 lower. We've had questions. Are there any follow-ups?
Councillor Inskip, you submitted some questions. Are you happy with the responses, and do you have any follow-ups?
So I'm happy with the response. I've just got a question on the booklet in relation to performance management, which was not produced in 2021-22, but was in previous years. When I asked whether it be reinstated in 2022-23, I'm told that the answer says taking environmental considerations into account. That's no longer a sensible way of sharing the information. Is the information available on the council's website?
Through you, Chair, I think I need to take that away and come back to members on that, because producing the actual booklet itself and posting it out was no longer considered a viable way to do that. But I'll speak with corporate management team about whether there's an intention to do something on the website. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Anne, or do we have any follow-ups? Councillor Every.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anne. I just wondered, as we do actually have the answer in the room, I think. I just wanted to comment on the underspend on the 2 quarters on homelessness, and what that actually means. We've got an underspend because we don't have any, or is there a reply that you'd like to make?
Are you talking about this year or previous year?
The 2 quarters both say there's an underspend.
We're currently on last year.
Sorry?
We're currently on last year's.
Do as well. I'd like to invite Angela Parminter to the table
Yeah,
just
I
to
think
explain
thank you.
how it is there are underspends in the homelessness budget, no matter which quarter it's in. If you wouldn't like, very briefly, because you could talk for 2 years about it, but if you give us a example.
Thank you. I will be brief. I think it's because of the prevention initiatives that we use. So we prevent homelessness at a much earlier stage. So we're not using the B&B accommodation, as you know, for over 10 years now. And I think the impact of bringing the community advice service in-house as well, working alongside the homelessness, we're addressing roots way before it gets to homelessness. So that's impacting on our underspend as well. So I can never say never, that we'll never place anyone in B&B again. I don't know what's around the corner. We've got the cost of living. We're working really hard going out this week to residents, but yeah, it's great work from the team.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was interested to see what was actually causing that. Is this a trend? I know you can't say never, can say never. I appreciate that. But is this something that we don't actually need this allocation of budget here in the future going forward in quite the same way?
We're currently going through the budget setting process, and we may look to how we set the budget. But as Angela said, you can't say that you're not going to need it, because yes, the trend in the last 10 years is you haven't needed as much. So that review is ongoing at the moment before we set the proposed budget for next year.
And if I may say so, it's a good problem to have.
Do you have any follow-up questions on your questions? I beg your
Oh,
pardon.
thank you
Your
very much.
Responses to your questions.
Right. No, just the one about community projects and grants. I know it's going to be putting in the surplus savings reserve, but if there are some community projects and grants that are still required, would we actually be able to borrow from the surplus savings reserve?
It's really clear that that's not a question for Lewis to respond to, but I'll answer through the chair. We always look at ways to fund community projects. There is still ample budget within the grant that's managed by Lewis's team. What Lewis is confirming is that actually over the years, it's not historically always been taken up. That's why it's gone back in service savings. With Still's completely different, because that's not a reserve. That's a fund that's always hopefully being topped up and reaches a different community. So if you have a specific, I have this project, then you email it to whoever you would normally would, myself or Sally or Lewis, and then they'll all get together. If one can't fund it, they tend to find someone that.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Whelan, you have a question for Anne.
Yeah, I just want to know really what the criteria is, bearing in mind the low take up of the grants that were applied for. Is that because in the community projects and grants, it says local clubs, groups and venues are continuing to recover? What's the criteria used for people applying for those grants? I know of some local clubs who have applied for grants and they have been turned down.
If I could ask Emma to answer that, not Anne.
Through you, Chair, again, it's not a question for Anne, it's a question for Lewis Page, the service manager, but the criteria, we'll make sure that we circulate it to you outside of this meeting and we'll give it to all members. I believe it's actually on the website. I'm looking for Lewis to nod his head at me. Yes, it's on the website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think if you have knowledge of specific groups that have had issues, then speak to either Lewis or Emma and they'll give you some assistance on that,
Okay.
for sure.
Thank you very much.
For Anne? In which case, then are we happy to note this report? Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne, for your time. Oh, staying on for the next one. Here she is. Ta-da! For agenda item number 11, the budget monitoring report.
So the 2022-23 Q2 report, we're currently forecasting 125,000 underspend on revenue, and the capital forecast is 1.822 million under budget.
Councillor Inskip, again, you have submitted a question. Are you content with the response, or do you have a
Yes.
follow-up? You're
Yeah,
content?
content.
Fabulous, thank you. And Councillor Trapp, you also submitted a question. Are you happy with the response? You're happy with the responses? Yes, you are. Thank you. Which case then are we happy to note note the report, agenda item 11. Thank you very much, Anne. Whew, I've got a head of steam. Agenda item number 12, and I will hand you over to Emma.
Thank you, Chair. What you have before you is the 6-month monitoring update. When service managers brought their service delivery plans here for approval, it was noted that members still wanted to receive a 6-month update, but there must have been a way that we could do this in a more simplistic approach that isn't overly burdensome on officers who are trying to get on with running the service. Instead of the old 6-month report took a lot to populate. So with that, we developed an exceptions reporting, which is what you had before you this evening. And so where there's not a variance reported, all of the targets within the service delivery plans are on track. I've got nothing to add at this stage, Chair, so happy to take questions.
I mean, I have to say my personal thought on this is I would rather officers were actually doing their jobs and helping residents rather than writing reports that every 6 months. I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't tell us anything. If this highlights quite, if there is one of the services is in trouble or falling behind, and then it can be dealt with. So as long as we get an annual report that shows us exactly where we are and what's gone on, I'm perfectly content with that. Unless anybody has any other views, I'm quite happy to note this report. Councillor? Councillor, oh, your councillor, you did ask some questions. I do beg your pardon.
Yeah, it's
Have you
more
got
a
any
comment I'll
follow-ups?
make though, rather than a. So when I first joined the council, we did have the first 6 monthly report in the November of 2019. And at that point, the then committee chair was very praiseworthy of the detail that was provided and seemed to be praising the level of detail that was there. And actually, I found that useful. And we do, in our corporate governance statement, right, make great play of the service delivery plans. And that was been a topic that's come up at audit committee because we haven't actually been doing it for the last couple of years. I know that COVID made that difficult, but I appreciate, you know, we don't want officers spending a huge amount of time on this, but my perception would be that, you know, if the service delivery plans are being regularly monitored, the information should be readily available to be reported. And I'm disappointed that we've gone for, let's say, a lighter weight report than I would have appreciated.
Ambrose Smith in rebuttal and state.
Well, it's not a rebuttal at all. It's just the way it was said. I was sitting here reading this and thought about this, how we've got it in front of us now and reporting by exception. And it must have been my decision at the time, before Julia came on, to actually change it. So what you said, I possibly did say, but I'm being male, I can change my mind. So that's obviously what I did. So I'm very pleased with the report. I'm saying that I've got a question on the report, if I may ask that question.
You may ask that question.
The question is, it's nice to see by exception, yes, but on the disaster recovery, which you actually went through, and you tested, it was tested, and it was successfully undertaken. My question is, did we learn anything from it? Emma.
Through you, Chair. Successfully undertaken means when we did the disaster recovery, it did everything we needed it to do. It did what we wanted it to do. And there are some improvements that we found that we could make to make it even better, to make it easier. But the plan itself worked, and it's also identified improvements we can make to make it better. So yes, we learned from it.
Well, okay, that would have made the report that much better by saying you've learned something from it. So thank you.
Have Councillor Every and then Councillor Schumann.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to pick up the auditing aspect of this. And I would suggest perhaps that we need to have a halfway house in this, because I appreciate there's a lot of work that went into the original plans, but I think this is a little bit too lightweight, and it talks about all targets on track. Well, I don't know about most of you, but I wouldn't know what those targets were from 6 months ago. I think it would be useful to have those targets reiterated with how they've got on with each of them, so we have at least a numerical table of what it is we are looking at, because at this moment in time we would have to physically go back to check the original ones and see what the targets were to see if they were on track, and I think something in the middle would be useful.
I'll pass you back to Emma to comment on that.
Just to talk members through the process, what we do at the beginning of the year is we adopt the service delivery plan for the year. That in it contains the target and then how we're going to achieve that and what the baseline was from last year generally. Then at the end of the year, we do a full-blown end of year report. We've met the target, we didn't meet the target, this is how. What we're doing with a 6-month report is saying halfway through the year, everything that members approved, that officers put forward, we're on track for. But actually, these are the ones we're not where it is. So the old 6-month report had exactly what you said, Councillor Every, which is the target, whether it's been met or the narrative that supports that. So I could look again at something slightly more, or not slightly, more detailed than what you have in front of you, that's less detailed than what we all agreed was slightly burdensome on the service managers getting on with the delivery plan. But I'm happy to take it back and review it. But to do what you say, Councillor Evans, is to go back to what was the original 6-month report. So we're still complying with our corporate governance statement because we've got the adopted plan, the end of year report, and this is the halfway indicator, if you will. But they are all available on our website as well. Just I just want to provide that clarity to members. Thank you.
Actually, I think you might get lucky here, Emma. I don't think it's
No,
your job.
It affects finance and assets as well.
Okay.
I didn't want to go back to the original. I wanted to remind the Operational Services Committee what those targets are and where we are with them so that we understand what is actually happening within each of the services. Whereas at the moment it says there, so for example, the communications manager is reporting all the targets on track. Well done, that's great, thank you very much. I don't know what they are unless I go back and look at them. So I think just a reminder, I think it's something also that our officers might actually quite like to show us. It shouldn't be too onerous, even if it was just a numerical table with some text on it. I just feel that it, by all means, go back and review it. But I think it would be difficult to actually see what the slippage was if we don't have a look at it from the KPIs. And it's a reminder to us, we are the monitoring group here. This is what we are looking at. And I think we should be reminded of what those targets are, because we would also need to see, how well our departments are doing.
Councillor Schumann and then Councillor Trapp and Councillor Ambrose Smith again.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably just a request for, perhaps to Isabel and Emma going forward, but before I mention that, it does feel a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, doesn't it? That, this one's not quite enough, but I get that it's difficult because I agree with Councillor Every entirely. Our job is to oversee, have an oversight of how well everyone's achieving. But equally, I guess the other challenge to it is that this is a public forum. From the public's perspective, they may see this as us sort of negating our responsibilities of keep holding the officers to account. We know it's not because we've made the decisions in history, but actually history won't be there for, people don't look back the way that we perhaps will remember in years to come. I'm sure Emma will take it away and come up with suggestions and we can, and through the chair, hopefully come up with how that will be monitored, and Isabel. So yeah, my only question to Emma and Isabel is, or challenge is, obviously you do anyway, but is to check the heads of services are being as robust as they can be in setting themselves realistic targets, but also challenging ones. I know that you do that, but it's just a reminder because I would prefer in some respects to have these reports where there's a number of targets which have been missed. But quite frankly, the explanation is we upped our target time and time again until it's unachievable, because quite frankly, we have only a finite amount of resource. We can only achieve what we can achieve. And some things are down to circumstance. We understand that. But in some respects, it's good to see that we pushed ourselves to the absolute limit before saying that's enough. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Schumann. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I'd like to sort of confirm or reaffirm what Councillor Every and Councillor Schumann has been saying. And I think it is quite important to have some kind of data there, even if it says on track, but maybe the target was 95%, but they've actually made 96%. And I think that's very valuable to actually have that information there. And I think the model one really is the planning one, where it said, this is the target, and this was the status. And I think that was a very nice brief summary of what has happened. So I would have a little bit more detail in there. Thank you.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Yes, Chair. I thought I was right in my initial decision of actually putting brevity there. I will still carry on with that. All I will suggest, if I may, is that the and the original plans actually accompany this particular document. And then you've got them there, you can look at them. Don't have to measure them. You've got that's been measured already by already been measured already by the important people, and that's the managers and the staff.
I'm going to hand you back to Emma.
I think through you, Chair, I think I've listened to all of the committee members, and I think there is, as Councillor Evans described, it's sort of a halfway house between the old reporting style and this new reporting style. So if you leave it with us as directors and the corporate management team as a whole to look at, because we've got the better part of a year to plan for what next year's will look like. So as Councillor Schumann said, it's a bit like the Goldilocks scenario. Didn't like the first one. This one's getting better, but we'll take the next one. So I note all the comments made, Chair, and we'll come back to members next year with an amended 6-month review plan that will incorporate some of the comments made this evening.
Yeah, 3.0. Having said that, then are we happy to note the contents of agenda item number 12?
Not really, Chair.
Are you not? There's always one. There's always one. But generally speaking, whilst we're not happy, we're noting. Thank you very much. The targets are fine. Now we move on to agenda item number 13, the Register of Buildings of Local Interest, which suddenly seemed to be very difficult to say.
Evening. Thank you, Chair. Call it the local list. It's easier.
Thank you.
Members will be aware that the council adopted a local list at the beginning of 2017 under my predecessor. Built into that was an expectation that there would be a review within 2 or 3 years. I think it was minuted as. COVID has delayed that somewhat. But it's been on my long list to do since I started in 2019. In 2020, the government offered some funding for pilot projects. All of the Cambridgeshire authorities, including the county, put together a fairly sketchy bid to participate in that project. And we were one of 22 pilot projects that were selected nationally to roll out a new approach to local listing. Essentially, we're already ahead of the game, but 3 of the other Cambridgeshire districts have not started local lists. So a large part of the focus was on their needs. But one of the benefits of participating in that county-wide bid was that it funded access and development for an internet-based portal to enable the public to make nominations and to record information which feeds into the County Historic Environment Record, which is administered by Cambridgeshire County. So over the last year or so, we had a project officer in post hosted by Cambridgeshire County Council, who led on public engagement and bringing the other districts up to speed. And in the meantime, we've also rolled out a review within East Cambridgeshire, which, as I said, was the commitment made when it was first adopted in 2017. That review is nearing completion. Only a couple of more parishes need to be looked at. So we're now in a position to work through that long list of nominations, which is about an extra 500 sites in addition to what were designated in 2017. Obviously, that's quite an administrative burden. So we're looking to try and streamline and rationalize the process now and ask for delegated authority to make final selections by the planning manager in conjunction with the chair of this committee, rather than the whole list being considered at full committee as it was in 2017 when it was just 90 entries.
Thank you very much for that explanation. So I'm now looking for a proposer for this recommendation. Councillor Ambrose Smith and a seconder. Councillor Every, thank you very much. Councillor Trapp asked a very salient question. Are you content? Oh, we haven't had a response. We're going to have a response now. We're going to have a response to the question now.
There is a little bit of confusion over the use of the word local list. I think we tried to avert that by calling it a register of buildings of local interest, but the shorthand is still local list, but it does lead to some confusion in the public's mind. It's not the same as the government statutory list. It doesn't have the same legal powers. It's supported by quite a useful policy in our local plan, but it's no more than that. So in terms of the protections that it can offer and the restrictions it can impose, then not significantly different to what people can do under their normal permitted development rights. So in terms of painting your front door pink, the policy doesn't control that.
No. I think the difference is it's the difference of buildings of local interest as opposed to the local heritage list, two completely different things.
Well,
Is that right, or is it-
no, it's the distinction between the local list and the national list.
Yeah.
The case you cited in Edinburgh is a listed building in a World Heritage Site. That has some
always
fairly
one.
strong protections. This is not the equivalent to that.
Oh.
But it's still supported by a local policy, but it wouldn't control that level of detail. People can do that anyway, so.
Councillor Trapp, feel free to paint your door pink if you wish.
Conservation area.
Unless you're in a conservation area. What's wrong with pink? My front door's pink.
Well, I would say that there are probably good reasons not to paint the front doors of Georgian townhouses pink.
I would agree. I would agree. I don't live in a
But
Georgian
there are
townhouse.
limits to the controls that
The local
the
list.
local list here
Yes, thank
can
you very
impose.
much. Any further questions? Councillor Every and Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you very much. Surprised me, I actually the heritage champion for these cans, just in case most of you didn't know. And but I've been working with Chris on this. This is so exciting. I can't tell you how exciting it is, because obviously putting on the register of buildings of interesting buildings is really, really important. But I do commend you to read really thoroughly the paragraphs 3.4, 3.5 and 3.6, which is going to capture on a database all our heritage sites across East Cambridgeshire, including our listed buildings, etc. And this will eventually give us a complete database of all of our heritage sites, from which we can really grow our tourism trade. And I'm sure that's actually not what Chris is after, but it will make a huge difference to knowing what our heritage is and making sure that our residents know, understand, and actually want to support the heritage as we go forward. It's a great project, beautifully done, and yeah, absolutely would support this.
Councillor Every, Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see in 4.3 that you've mentioned that parish councils and town councils will be there'll be representation is written here. Representation. I just asked that will they actually be heard? Because I'm concerned a little bit about what Councillor Every's just said, because there's heritage, there's good and there's bad, and I think that should be the parish council, town council, who should actually be saying this is not so good.
Well, there are established guidelines. There's a specialist document from Historic England. The county-wide project has harmonised its selection criteria in line with those, and they are quite well established. Our existing local list certainly conforms to those. There is a scoring system against those criteria with a minimum threshold, so it is being done as systematically as it can be. As I say, 600 sites is quite a backlog to work through. I anticipate that the adoption process will be rolled out on a parish basis. So all affected householders in a particular parish and the parish council will all be notified and have a window to make representations. In terms of the selection of what's coming forward, there's no point putting forward no hopers. You know, those are weeded out at panel level. The things that are coming forward are strong, credible candidates, which reflect the heritage of the district. So in terms of who decides good and bad heritage, they tend to be self-selecting.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Fine, question's been asked, thanks.
Councillor Schumann.
Thank you, Chairman. I remember my dear late friend Mike Rouse, when we did this list before, who wants to include a number of stink pipes and water pumps throughout the district. And I'm sure Chris will probably say there's some that are included.
I'm happy to build on his legacy. I've been I've made a particular point of looking for water pumps. I haven't found any more stink pipes than ones in ones in Little Downham.
Sure.
But if any comes to my attention, they'll certainly be favourably considered.
I'm glad to hear it. And it was just a general point through you, Chair, again, it caused some confusion, and even I think is demonstrated in this meeting. That being on the list doesn't mean it's a listed building in the traditional sense. And so, yes, as a lot of members I know have sat either on or in planning committee meetings, it gives weight to, and that's all we can say. And sometimes that will determine the application one way or the other, depending on the weight that's attributed to it. But unlike listed building, which has a very different set of regulations behind it. But thank you, and happy to support the recommendation and move this forward. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my comments that I think this is, this is a good initiative. I remember it the first time around, but let's say the response was mixed. So we've got some parishes that did a lot of work on this, and others that have an equally good sets of buildings that just didn't that just don't feature on the list. So I think it's good to take this forward and make it more comprehensive. I was just actually looking at the existing list, and the 4 parishes I cover, 2 don't have any properties. One has 4, one has 11. The 11 is the parish I'm on the parish council. I remember this exercise before, and we actually had a group of 4 or 5 sort of volunteers in the village who went around and identified properties, and it was really quite a good exercise. And it doesn't always have to be sort of 17th, 18th, 19th century properties. We do have one in Sutton that's a late 20th century building. So, heritage doesn't always have to be very old, as long as it has some special factors with it.
Do we feel there's any further need for debate on this item, or can we go to the vote? I think if we move to the vote, everybody all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Been very interesting. Now we move on to agenda item number 14, which is the building control fees and charges review. Evening. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Yes, Craig Smith, Building Control Manager. Been here a couple of years, and one thing the pandemic did afford me was a little bit of time to do a holistic, exhaustive review of the building control charges in line with the 2010 government local authority building control charges and fees, which is set nationally. Basically, the fees hadn't been looked at since 2018. As I'm sure you can appreciate, in 4 years, an awful lot has happened within the construction industry. And the new fees recommended and contained in the report that have been given in have been done so that they are fair, they are representative of the work we do as a building control body. They still offer great value for money. We are still the lowest charger within the district compared to private companies. We are still lower than a lot of adjoining local authorities for their work. But above all, they are robust now and they can withstand any form of challenge from anybody who wants to say, well, why have I paid this much? How have you calculated those fees? They've now been holistically put with hourly rates that reflect the work we have to do. And if they get challenged, we can extrapolate it back to an hourly charge representative. I don't think there's really a lot more that I need to say other than what's in the report.
Thank you very much, Craig. Do we have any questions for Craig? In which case then I can move on to the debate. Does anybody have anything they would like to say about the report? Councillor Ambrose. Oh, I know, beg your pardon. We need a proposer and a seconder. A proposer, Councillor Ambrose Smith.
I'll do that as well.
You're multitasking, David, multitasking. And seconder, Christine Ambrose Smith. And now we can move swiftly to the debate. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Councillor Ambrose?
Just an observation,
Just
if I
an
may. I think Craig actually said it. Fair and great value for money. Thank you, Craig. You made my bit for me. Thank you. As you say, nice report, nice and concise. We see it all. Perhaps going forward, if we can see what it was and what it was and what it is on the same page, that would be good as well. But other than that, excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Webber.
Hi, using building control services quite a lot. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but they are fair. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. They need to increase, and I think they are comparable to others, but I think what our building control team have that some other private building control services don't have is the sort of experience and the knowledge of the area, and they build up a rapport with local builders, and I think that's quite valuable, and they always have a very sensible approach, which some don't always. So I think, yeah, I think the increase is very fair and reasonable, and agree with it.
I have to say, we used your building control services, and the builder said, who are you using? Said he's a fantastic, because they know what they're talking about. And you do just have a fantastic relationship, a reputation throughout the district. Builders are quite comforted to know who you're using for building control, I've discovered. Thank you very much. I'm quite happy to go to the vote on this then, please. All in favour? Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Craig.
Well done, Craig.
Can you pass our thanks on to your team?
Very good.
Good evening, Karen. We're now moving on to agenda item number 15, which is the private sector housing enforcement policy and consultation results.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This was really just to bring the draft private sector housing enforcement policy that was taken to committee on the 13th of June this year. It went out to a consultation for a period of 8 weeks, and we sent it to 91 landlords and managing agents, and they were the landlords that we were aware of from our department that we'd had dealings with in the past or had discussions with over various issues. So just a quick review. The summary of the responses was that the policy would help the council make fair and consistent enforcement decisions, and the majority felt that the penalty matrices were fair and proportionate. So really all I would say is that it was generally supported with no significant changes.
Thank you, Karen. I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schumann, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Karen on the report? Oh, Councillor Inskip has submitted some questions. Are you happy with the responses, Mark, or would you like some follow-up?
Just one on the housing stock model. So the answer does say that. So let's say it gives you generally good information, but are there any steps you can take to sort of supplement that information to get a more accurate sort of local picture?
We can. Currently, whenever we do an inspection, we then check on the housing model data, the accuracy of that information, and we can update that. So we have been finding there is some anomalies. If the officer goes out as in response to a complaint about a private rented sector, We have been finding that it said it's owner occupier on the housing model. So we have been correcting that, but that's an ongoing process as we become aware of any anomalies.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any further questions for Karen? Do we feel there's any need to debate this, or can we move to the vote? I'm quite content to move to the vote. All in favour? Thank you very much. Don't move, Karen, because you're agenda item number 16 as well, which is the update to the private sector housing renewal policy.
Thank you, Chair. This is a housing renewal policy, so slightly different from the enforcement policy. The previous policy was adopted in 2015, and its focus at that time was on the grant and loan assistance that was available within the authority for vulnerable people, particularly those who are disabled or who need to remain in their own homes that are safe and suitable. So in 2016 and 17, a county-wide review was held on disabled facility grants, and that resulted in the Cambridgeshire Housing Adaptations Agreement between the district and county councils in partnership with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Clinical Commissioning Group. So the new East Cambridgeshire Housing Adaptations and Repairs Policy was adopted in 2019, incorporating those key principles, and therefore the private sector housing renewal policy was no longer fit for purpose. So hence the need to bring this for discussion and an update to the policy. So housing renewal requires a range of measures in addition to grant support. This is where we use the housing model to influence and update potential areas of housing renewal. And the policy itself must support a range of measures which the local authority can influence the protection of public health and good quality housing, which is affordable for people and their needs. And the key objectives of the policy are to enable the elderly, vulnerable, disabled to live in comfort and security in their homes, increase the proportion of private sector housing that is of a decent standard, to reduce fuel poverty, to support initiatives to bring long-term empty homes back into use, and to provide accessible information to the public to enable them to obtain assistance and advice on all matters around housing disrepair. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Karen. You've submitted some questions. Sorry? Oh, yes, sorry. I'm happy to, sorry, I'm fatigued. I'm proposing this, happy to propose this from the chair, and Councillor Schumann is seconding. Thank you very much. Councillor Inskip, you've submitted some questions. Are you content, and do you have any follow-ups?
I do have a few follow-ups. So I asked a question about the effectiveness of the role of East Cambridgeshire Care and Repair, and the answer is the service produces a series of performance measures that are submitted to Cambridgeshire County Council on a quarterly basis. Is that something that can also be shared to members here so that they're aware of what those, of how the service is running?
Can I ask?
Sorry, Liz, can you come to the table because of the microphone, please? Not for YouTube, it's not.
Yes, of course. We can share that quarterly data with members as and when we produce it and send it to the county. We also have to produce financial information through Delta to central government as well. But we can provide information on sort of that financial spend against grant, against the number of grants that we provide as well. So we can make that available.
Okay, and the question I had on page 20 of the policy about because that referred to this leaflet drop in Woods Ditton. That's quite a long answer, but I'm just wondering if I've understood correctly. Are we saying that that has or that will be repeated in other areas? What's the status of that? Will it be done in other parts of the district? And if so, when is that going to be known?
I did ask the energy officer to respond to this. So she did say that it's open to all, accessible to all members within the district, all all residents within the district. They've shared a lot on social media and on the website, and they've done specific marketing in certain areas. And I do believe that's Downham and Hadnam are the other two areas that were identified as potentially having a higher number of properties in fuel poverty and with excess cold.
Okay, thank you.
You submitted a question. Are you content? Are you, I'm delighted to hear it.
More than happy. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further questions for either Karen or Liz? Councillor Schumann.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question or comment really. On page 15 of the policy, there was just an insertion that said to link the website once policy approved, which I presume is after this evening. So just to make sure that will be updated. Thank you.
We have no further questions. Is that a legacy microphone, Councillor Inskeep? Thank you. If we have no further questions, do we feel we need to debate, or are we content to move to the vote? Move to the vote, in which case, all in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for staying so late. Thank you, Angela. We're now on agenda item number 7, the Children and Adults at Risk Safeguarding Policy.
Thank you, Chair. In my one of my roles as the lead safeguarding officer for East Cambridgeshire, we're bringing you our new Children and Adults at Risk Safeguarding Policy. Firstly, I wanted to apologise for the delay in bringing it back to committee. There was a couple of things going on in the background. One, we were undergoing an audit for safeguarding, and we wanted to incorporate any recommendations that came out of that within the new policy. And secondly, all the other local authorities within the sub-region have been working really closely with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Safeguarding Partnership, as they wanted us all to adopt a consistent policy throughout the sub-region. So we've all worked together. Obviously, we've incorporated the East Cambs way of working, but it means that across the sub-region, we're all giving out the same consistent message. As safeguarding is obviously everyone's responsibility, I have requested mandatory training for all staff to be arranged through HR. We are looking at setting up training matrix, so we'll record all staff and training moving forward in line with the audit recommendations. Myself and all the designated safeguarding officers are meeting. We're going to go through all the documents on the internet, bring them all up to date. And obviously, once this policy is approved, that's going to go straight on the internet and it will be sent out to all staff and members. We've set up a new safeguarding email, so it makes it much easier for staff and members to send through any queries or concerns they have, that all the designated safeguarding officers will have access to, along with myself. Once the policy is approved again, obviously it's going to go straight on the internet because we're really mindful that the one is currently out of date, and we're asking members to recommend the policy for approval, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. If happy proposer, Councillor Liz, you're happy to propose, Councillor Everett? And second, Councillor Webber. Thank you very much. Any questions? Christine, Councillor Whelan. Thank you. Sorry, Christine. Councillor Whelan.
That's absolutely fine.
And then you.
Just a couple, well,
Just
a couple of
Councillor
3
Huffington.
points, actually. So you're saying on 4.2 that you're going to roll out the training for members as well. I think that's quite important, bearing in mind that having done safeguarding, it changes quite rapidly. And basically, I would say that there are probably some members who have never done safeguarding training at all, and they probably wouldn't even know what to look for regarding safeguarding. And the other point I'd like to make is in your actual policy and documents on pages 12 and 14, you have mentioned CRBs. They are now DBSs. They're not CRBs. That changed in 2012.
Through you, Chair, absolutely right. It must be an old, because that was correct. I thought this was corrected before it was published. So in the version that we've seen, it must just a tracking error. It's the only change. but we'll make sure it does say DBS when it's published on the website.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that is quite, I mean, this disclosure barring system is different from the old CRB, sorry. Thank you. I noted I will make those amendments.
Councillor Every, apologies.
Hi, Angela. I'm glad to see the report coming back. And I'd like to refer to page 11 of the policy on training, please. The statement says that nothing is more important, by the way, than safeguarding, I have to say. The council will make all reasonable steps to ensure that all staff, managers and elected members, et cetera. However, I would like to see it slightly stronger in this, because I would like to see how you are proposed to evidence that people have had the training, that this is monitored, and how you're going to deal with it if somebody has not had the training, which is absolutely vital. It's not a question of whether people should have it; they have to have it. It's part of their role. So I'd like to show. It would be easy for us as well in order to see that there's some evidence of registers or recording that people have done this and that this is monitored regularly, and that efforts are made to deal with, that sounds awful, but you know what I mean, with anybody who has slipped through the net. Is that possible to have that evidence register within the policy?
Absolutely, yeah. So I do a safeguarding induction in all of the staff in inductions that are held in the council chamber. I'm coming to the one in the members' inductions in May next year, and we're looking obviously at rolling out more training. One of the recommendations from the audit was to set up the training matrix. So although HR will record who attends the induction sessions, actually there are some staff that are sticking through the net. What I'd like to do is roll out mandatory training for every member of staff moving forward. We also send out additional free training from the safeguarding board to frontline staff that are dealing with adults and children on a daily basis. And again, you're right, I need to be recording them. So moving forward, that is something we are doing.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, just to follow up on that, and then what happens if someone doesn't undertake the training when BFLs? That goes through a separate process. It's not dealt with by the lead safeguarding officer. We go through our normal HR procedures for that.
Ask what would happen if it's an elected member refused to do the safeguarding? Are there steps that can be taken? Just out of curiosity, I'm just curious.
For members, it's not for the council to mandate to members. As strong as we can be as a council is to strongly encourage members to undertake training, which we will always do. We do it on data protection, for example, and that's the thing. But we strongly encourage members to undertake training when it's offered to them. Thank you.
So William, you have a follow-up question.
Chair, just on that.
Reiterate.
Oh, sorry, on that point, can I just check before we move on? Sorry to interrupt, Councillor. If members have had training elsewhere, can we record that rather than duplicate? Because I'm aware that a number of members are safeguard trained in a number of establishments, and I don't want to start duplicating work or cost.
Sensible point, Councillor Schumann.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, you will have, yes.
Basically, yeah, I mean, some of us have been, had safeguarding training. Obviously, you have to renew that every 2 years, and that's vital as well, that people realise that it is an ongoing thing and it's a 2-year thing to do.
If I could just come in on there, it's you could have what we'd call a portable DBS, but it is up to the organisation to determine whether they accept the safeguarding training that somebody has had and acknowledge that in the records.
Through you, Chair, just to come back, we'll take that away and look at it, because it seems to make sense that you can transfer one set of DBS training, but it would depend on who has given you that training. We just need to make sure it's someone that the board recognises as a suitable training provider. So before giving a blanket yes, we just need to check who's accredited the training, basically. Thank you.
Dr. Schumann?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, it's the examples where I know that a number of members, including myself, are trustees or involved with educational establishments where the training is delivered by Cambridgeshire County Council, and I'm sure we'd recognise their safeguarding training. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I'm sure that was fine, but I think it's making sure we have a robust process and not just someone says, oh, well, I've done it, and they did something 5 years ago that wasn't really, and I do think Councillor Every's point, I think original point was very well made, because I think this more than anything, we need to make sure that, you know, staff have done it and really encourage members to do it. And I know we do when it comes to members, you mentioned data protection, but as we found out at the audit committee, I think 2 of the 28 members had done the data protection training. So we're not always very good at following our own sort of advice. So I think this one in particular, we need to emphasize and encourage in the strongest way to members to do.
Well made points, everybody. Are we content that the A have no further questions for Angela, and we're content we can move to the vote on this? With the amendments, yes. Content to move to the vote? All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much for staying late, Angela. This is now agenda item 18 for noting review of the outdoor sports facility strategy.
Chairman,
I did beg your
I need to go back. CRB is right. So it's the old, it's not DBS, it's CRB now.
No,
Yes.
it's not. Is it?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I thought I'd corrected it before, but because it doesn't change the. Yeah. So no, it's CRB check.
I thought it was DBS.
She not me now. Ignore me. Sorry.
Yeah, I will clarify because I thought it was CRB because we've been doing them for the Ukraine hosts. So we've been doing lots and lots and lots, and I'm pretty sure it is CRB now, but I will double check. I might be wrong. Yeah, well, I'll clarify it tomorrow.
Maybe they're different, but I carry out DBS checks for staff, for our staff, and I'm doing DBS checks at the moment, but it might be too, there may be some confusion. I think it's just worth, like I said, it's just what might be just different things. So I'm just checking.
Anyway,
Reassure members it will have the
right
absolute
one
right
on.
references.
Yes, absolutely. Agenda item 18, which is the review of outdoor sports facility strategy, and Victor is going to present to us. This report is for noting.
Good evening. Thank you. I shan't add a great deal to what's in the report. It may be worth just picking out 1 or 2 key points. The first is, I think, that the strategy is in many respects an evidence base rather than an action plan in any detailed sense. And that's necessarily the case, not least, for example, because it includes things like football team numbers and things like that, which will change from one season to another. So in that sense, it provides a snapshot at a point in time and a reasonably good evidence base for the levels of demand for sports facilities around the district. But it doesn't necessarily provide, as I say, and cannot necessarily provide a specific action plan for delivery of improved facilities. And one reason for that is, perhaps the second main point that needs to be made, is that ECDC, of course, does not of itself either control or own any outdoor sports facilities, with the exception, of course, of the 3G pitch at the Hive. Everything is in the hands of either the school sites or the parish councils, and usage will always be by local clubs. So therefore, local ownership is, I think, fundamental. So with those points in mind, what we have, I think, is an audit, an evidence base, which we've been able to draw up in collaboration with the sports governing bodies. And so far as they've engaged with it, with parish councils and local clubs, which provide us with a platform going forward. Over time, of course, and I've mentioned this, that evidence base will deteriorate in its currency, because a club which currently has teams in, let's say, 7 or 8 age groups, those things change over time. and therefore the needs will evolve, and the strategy itself will need to be revisited. We're not at that stage at the moment, but that will come over time. I don't think that there is anything else I would add at this point. It's working reasonably well and is providing a good platform for discussions, both with partner agencies and, where appropriate, with local stakeholders in their aspirations to improve facilities. But I'm obviously happy to take questions.
Thank you, Victor. Councillor Inskip, you submitted some questions. Are you content? And do you have a follow-up?
I don't really have I guess I've got a couple of comments on the questions, but I'll on the answers. I guess the concern I have, so I understand the audit nature of the strategy, and I think, you know, that's useful in itself. But it does in the report in paragraph 3.2 talk about providing a basis for securing and developing facilities in partnership with local stakeholders, sports bodies, and so on. What does concern me is that how we try to bring everyone up to the same level across the district, because I think in some areas there are you know, already existing sports groups, there are parish councils that are familiar with the processes and proactive and so on. But I think in other areas there are either there aren't those groups, and there aren't necessarily the parish councils don't feel they know what they need to do. And there's a danger is in those areas we just never get off the ground with the sort of facilities that we ought to be able to have across the district. And that then ties in with my second question about you know, what do we do in terms of looking at those areas that are where provision is furthest from, let's say, adequate provision, to make sure that we are helping, you know, the district as a whole, and particularly those areas that are going to struggle more. You know, I'm not against the strategy, but I just think there's more that we could be doing.
Would you like? You don't think what? Beg your pardon. Oh, you had a question in
Ignore the
advance.
game.
Oh, sorry.
I submitted a question. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be very football sort of dominated this thing. I was just wondering, there are places that I know who would like improvement to some of their sports pitches. And I'm wondering if there may be something from the community, from Lewis Page, one can get some money for things like this, because it is quite important for particularly small villages where there's not that much money, but there's quite a bit of activity. So I think we ought to be trying to promote that as well.
I think we could take that away, Chair, just to consider, as I said previously, whenever someone comes up with an idea, we always look to how do we fund this within the existing grants and other resources, because it might be still if it's physical infrastructure. So we'll take all those thoughts in. So if you know the club, direct them to Victor if it's sports, if it's community-based leisure, and we'll all get together and find out if there's a way to fund it. If not, we'll find a way, because you get sports funding and other funding streams, we'll point them in the right direction, Chairman.
I was going to say, if you're looking for local football clubs, the FA are desperate to improve facilities. And if you can scare up a Wildcats team, you will definitely get funding from the FA. Just as sort of a local,
Are you a keen footballer then? I mean, are you?
One of my many skills, John, yes, is as I'm, yes, no, I'm not, but I'm a great supporter of youth activity. And I know it's something we're looking at in Fordham at the moment, and that the sums that they will come forward with are eye-watering. If you have the right criteria, you meet the right criteria. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
We're happy to note and move on to agenda item. Thank you very much, Victor, for staying so late. Are you staying on? Staying on, don't go anywhere. Okay, to agenda item 19A. David and Joe are going to leave the room. Because they've been. Yes, please. I have to say, I'd be content with mushy peas and curry sauce, but there you go. Mushy peas, yes. Thank you, Vic. Ed.
Thank you. I will start with an acknowledgement. There are 3 reports, but of course,
We have to take them separately, I'm afraid.
we do indeed. But of course, the preamble to each of them is virtually identical. So
Yes.
my apologies for that. I think that there is a general theme running through all 3 of them, though, which is that if in truth, where we would like to get the freestanding leisure providers to is a situation where they're developing their facilities, developing their services. Their facilities are all modern and fit for purpose, and that they are actively used by as many people as possible within the local population. Where many of them are as trusts is in a slightly different place, because they are still dealing with the legacy of facilities which go back a long way and have therefore started to age, not always particularly gracefully, and where they are still managing the financial effects both of COVID and now the increase in utility prices. So I think those general comments probably apply, unfortunately, to all 3 of these reports. In a sense, there's a gap between where we'd like to be and where the trusts in particular are at present. Having made that comment, that applies specifically in relation to Littleport, not because of the age of the facilities, of course, but because of partly, again, that point about the financial impact of the pandemic, which has reduced the income of all of the trusts fairly sharply over the period of a year or 2. And not all of that effect has yet disappeared from the system, because many centres are still, should we say, rebuilding their businesses even now, for all kinds of reasons. So that's perhaps one point worth making. Another is that, again, and this is common to everybody, but it's certainly true at Littleport, is that all of the trusts are dealing with a fairly sharp increase in their utilities costs. And effectively what we're seeing is a squeeze between falling income on one side and some sharply rising costs on the other. In this instance as well, I think they have simply found themselves with a problem with the facility, which wouldn't necessarily have been anticipated, I think, 5 years ago. But nonetheless, it's what they have. And therefore, I'm proposing that the recommendation is that, yes, these are unusual circumstances, and that this is a grant which I feel would potentially help get them out of potential trouble.
Thank you, Victor. Councillor Ambrose Smith, you submitted a question. Are you content, or would you like to follow up?
I'm not entirely happy with 2 or 3 of the points in the officer's answer. I would like to give some information to put the grant in context, if that's all right.
Is that clarification or discussion?
It's probably better to it could be now, Chair.
Carry on, Christine.
It's not a question for officers.
It's not a question for
No,
officers.
no, it's just for information
Yeah.
to
Do
members.
we have any other questions for the officer on this particular item before we move into debate then? No. Oh, Councillor Councillor Every.
Yes, I just wanted to try and put it in context with the 3 bids that there are. 2 of them are definitely capital costs. And the Littleport one is maintenance. I mean, doing lines is maintenance, which all of them have to do. So was this grant for capital costs? Was that what was requested from the leisure centres? I'm not saying you shouldn't, but was it for capital rather than just being able to play football or whatever? So I'm really trying to find out what the brief said, really. Did you get what I said?
Sorry about that. The request is simply for the work as it is. How the work is classified is indeed a moot point, because it could well be contended that it's essentially a revenue maintenance cost. That doesn't necessarily exclude it from consideration, because the SLA program, which preceded this, did take in, for example, service and program improvements. So there's no kind of clear line between capital and revenue where one is supportable and the other is not. It probably is true that this is more of a maintenance item than would normally be put forward. But as I say, these are unusual times.
Just wanted to check that it wasn't creating a precedent. That was it.
If we'd like to move through to the debate, then I think Christine Ambrose-Smith would like to kick off and give us some salient facts on the situation.
While I'm sure most members are aware of Littleport Leisure Centre, I would like just to put some points over, and then I will address the comments in the officer's response. The centre is currently run as a business within a charitable status. Only now employs a full-time equivalent of 3.2 members of staff. Now, if we bear in mind the sheer scale, that is quite stretching. Littleport Leisure is open 7 days a week, 9 AM till 10 PM, Monday to Friday, lesser hours during the weekend. It receives no external funding other than grant applications, which are usually project specific. So, you know, this might be field activities and within the centre itself. The user age range covers literally toddlers to the very senior members of our community, many with health issues for which exercise, activity and mental stimulation are extremely important. User charges are being held at the moment at the current levels to ensure that as many people as possible are able to afford to use the facilities. And please bear in mind that in Littleport we do have considerable levels of deprivation. As with many commercial and business buildings, as Victor has alluded to, the recent hikes in energy costs have had a devastating impact. Last year's energy costs was 36,000 and these are set to rise to 79,000. This is only one of many annual costs and charges that have to be covered. The Leisure Trust faced business rates going from nil to an annual charge of 6,000, which in the scheme is not high, but it still has to be has to come out of the income, and there are numerous other works to be paid for. This year, drainage dikes need to be cleared. That costs 4,000. Work to trees, another 4,000. Littleport Leisure has under its control a considerable park-like setting, and this does come at a cost. Now, the grant in question is to cover the cost of the renovation of the main hall floor. This is used during the school day by students of LECA and at other times for a range of organised sports and training. A major use is for roller skating. These are young people training under the supervision of a local club, and some of these young people perform to international medal winning standards. Roller skating was highlighted as an important activity during the planning process of the centre, and there were many discussions with the contractors and Cambs County Council around the quality of the flooring required. The flooring installed and chosen by the construction company should have had a life of 10 years before renovation was required. The centre opened in the autumn of 2017, and 5 years later, it's in need of considerable renovation at a cost of 15,000. Littleport Leisure has found funding of 3,000, which if the 12,000 request is reduced to 10,000, will leave a funding gap. This 2,000 shortfall is not a huge sum, but to a community venue struggling to keep afloat and indeed to keep open, it is a considerable sum. Now, just to get rid of any doubt, being married to the chair of trustees, I take part in no meetings, I take part in no discussions. If there are meetings convened, I remove myself out of hearing. All of this information that I've asked to David to put this forward is what he gave me. So it's what I've been told, not what I know. Now, it's mentioned that after the rolling skating is unusually, has a significant effect on flooring. And that may be due to the fact that it needs renovating. But this was heavily brought up time and time again in the planning process. And it was Cambs County Council in conjunction with a construction company who purchased and installed this flooring. So, the problem was highlighted time and time again and probably wasn't taken on sufficiently. Now, the sports hall is a Lecker asset. When the building was constructed by Cambs County Council, it was transferred on a 123-year lease or some such figure to Littleport Parish Council, now Littleport Town Council. They in turn leased it to Littleport Leisure Trust on a similar timescale. So it is not a school asset. So ultimately it is owned by Cambs County Council, but Lecker pay the trust for the use of the school during the school, by the school during the school day. So that is where we are. So that is why I wanted to inform members of the state of affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Well, I have to say, I've read through this and with all due respect, Victor, I think dropping it by £2,000 seems to be a little bit mean. They are struggling, as you have so rightly said, and I am personally minded to propose from the chair that the grant becomes £12,000 as requested and not £10,000. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Schumann. Do we have any further questions or debate? Councillor Trapp.
Isn't there any redress to the manufacturers if they produce the floor, which should have been 10 years and is now only 5 years? And I think a lot of, I mean, I hear your sob story, but I think a lot of sports, yeah, but there's a lot of sports and culture places are feeling the pinch. It's happening. And whether we should be supporting one as opposed to others, I'm not sure. I think that's
we do have two others following swiftly on, Councillor Trapp.
I do realise this. But
so we're not singling
that
out.
only represents a small minority of the sites in these accounts.
They are the applicants that have come forward for grants. Are there any further debates or comments that anybody would like to make to the proposal? I don't think it's necessary, Christine. I think we've covered everything. Does anybody have anything else they'd say before we move to the vote? I would like to propose then that this is item 2.1 is amended to read £12,000, the original application grant number to Littleport Leisure as set out in 4.1. If we could, all those in favour? Yes, I think so. You don't have any interest? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Victor. We're now moving on to item 9B, which is the sports facilities grant in Soham. Well, it's a shame Councillor Jones had to leave. He could have had something to say on this. Is that why he left? Oh, right. Okay. So yes, I thought he would have wanted to say something. Thrilled, John, thrilled. Carry on. I don't think you probably need to do the preamble because we've got that because it's the same for all three. So if you just want to get to the numbers, I suppose, which is the meaty part.
Very good. Yes, again, a historical problem, but really quite a chunky one this time. The trust originally were looking, as you've gathered, at overcladding. Because they are proposing to overclad an asbestos cement roof. This seemed to us to carry quite a number of project risks of one kind or another. And therefore we felt that it would be better, and the trust are very happy with this, to go for an outright replacement and have the job done properly, quite frankly, and for the foreseeable future. The pressures upon the trust are similar to those that we've just considered in relation to Littleport. Again, income which is yet to recover to 2019 levels, as set against increasing costs. The costs for the project itself are clearly still slightly more at large than I would frankly wish. But I don't think we're actually going to overcome that until we can get further down the road with the project. They will need, and they are aware of this, to obtain absolutely current and definitive costs from their preferred contractors. And they're also aware that ECDC cannot possibly be expected to pay for the entire job. From the point of view partnership funding in general, and more specifically, they are, as I say, as I've mentioned in the report, in discussions with Amy for potential funding. I understand that those discussions are, shall we say, constructive and positive, but they're not yet, I think, in a position to have a definitive outcome from them. And there is often a case where we're talking about multiple funders for a project. We're often playing a kind of after you, Claude, kind of game, whereby everybody wants to know what everyone else's position is before they commit themselves. Ours is clearly likely to be the largest tranche of any funding for this project, and therefore it seems sensible to bring this forward to the committee now in order to break the deadlock.
Thank you, Victor. Do we have any questions for Victor? Councillor Schumann? Oh, do beg your pardon, miles away. It's all right. Thinking about the fish and chips that didn't come my way. Do we have a proposer for this? Councillor Ebery? And a seconder? Councillor Schumann. Any questions for Victor before we go any further, or move straight into the debate? Let's move straight into debate then, Councillor Schumann.
Very quickly, Chair, because I'm mindful of time and it's getting on to the evening. Just to say that this, contrary to actually what Councillor Trapps had said earlier, our three bids represent Soham, Ely and Littleport, the three biggest parishes or biggest communities within East Cambridgeshire. So I think it is good that we've had a selection representing a huge swathe of our population, and I'd encourage any other organisations to bid if they so wish. This bid in particular obviously is as a resident of Soham, but also as somebody who in the past was a member of the Board of Trustees for the Ross Pierce Sports Centre, which is why I haven't declared interest now because I'm no longer a member. This bid, I think, is one which I welcome with a heavy heart, which is a funny thing to say, I guess, but it's because this recognises that the facility in Soham is ageing and quite frankly aged, I think, and we have to have a serious discussion, I think, as a council and as a community of Soham about how they may address their sports facilities in the future, because we've got obviously the Hive in Ely, we have Liverpool Leisure Centre, fairly new buildings. And the Ross Pierce Sports Centre is some 30 plus years old now and is showing its age. And I think I'm slightly concerned that before we know it, it could end up being a bit of a black hole that we keep chucking money into. But quite frankly, it's recognizing that it just needs to have some wholesale work done to it, or an alternative leisure facility considered. Having said that, if we don't do it, then as I identified earlier, that Soham is a huge community within East Cambridgeshire, and this facility is a much loved facility. And with water pouring through the ceiling at times and holes in the wall because of damage, etc., continuing to happen, people won't use it. And we know that when people don't use facilities, then it has a knock-on effect that they're going to be coming cap in hand more often to us to say, you know, we need more help. So it's not sustainable. This is something that absolutely needs to happen. So I support the bid wholeheartedly, providing they get the other external funding. But I think we do need to look strategically in future about what we do to support the centre or look alternative accommodation. Just lastly to say that I think that there is more to it as well, with regard to us making sure that the centre is sustainable in every sense of its governance, of its running, etc., so that we can make sure that if it is going to have to survive for as long as possible, we support it as East Cambs in every aspect to carry on. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Inskip, you want to add to the debate?
Yeah, I think in terms of looking at more generally at where schemes with funding, I think at the moment we are with Soham, Ely and Littleport. We do also need to think about the south of the district. But I think in terms of this this particular proposal, my only trips to Ross Pierpoint Centre are sports centre or election counts, but generally there's enough time when not a lot is happening to look up and just see how desperate the need is to repair the roof, and I think it is clearly this is something that's in desperate need, and whatever solutions can be developed in the longer term, I think in the short term we have to do this to help make the centre sustainable, and I agree a lot with a lot of what Councillor Schumann has said. So I'm fully supportive of this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Inskip. Do we have any further comments or debate, or should we move to the vote? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 19C, which is the same thing again, but to Ely Outdoor Sports Association.
Thank you, Chair. The arguments, the rationale is essentially the same.
For this, I'm happy to propose from the chair. Councillor Webber is seconding. Victor, or anything we would like to add in debate? Let's move to the vote then. Unanimous? That's unanimous. Thank you very much for staying so late, Victor. Poor Stephanie. You could have had fish and chips. I can't stop thinking. I can't stop thinking. She got a caught fish, yes. I can't stop thinking about fish and chips. Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. This item is just for noting. Obviously, there have been questions submitted and questions can be asked. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chair. In March 2021, this committee approved the East Cambs Youth Strategy and Action Plan. Members requested that progress updates be provided to the committee every 6 months. Implementation of the action plan commenced in April 21, and updates have since been provided in September 21 and March 22. The action plan at Appendix 1 includes a column outlining progress made since the start of its implementation, including progress made between the 1st of April 22 and 30th of September 22. Members are requested to note progress made against the Youth Action Plan. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Inskip, you've submitted some questions. Are you content with the answers or do you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up. So on the first question I asked about what evidence has been gathered to confirm young people are actively making use of the information on the ECDC youth pages. The answer talks about the survey, but as we've seen from the earlier report on customer services, we do have analytical data available that shows how regularly pages are used in the age groups and so on. I was expecting that we'd have some of that shared in response to my answer. So I just wonder whether that data is available and whether that has been examined.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Inskip. We do have some analytical data that we can share with members if that is useful. With regards to the survey that's referred to, we are continually seeking feedback from local young people, because obviously we want these web pages to be for their benefit, really. So we're continually seeking feedback, any suggestions from local young people of how we could potentially make them better, if there's any information missing that would be beneficial, not necessarily just for young people, but whether it to be teachers, schools, parents, carers, whoever it may be. But yeah, we do have some analytical data. In your second question that you asked, Councillor Inskip, we did provide some high level figures, I guess, analytical figures that we'd obtained from the web team, but we can provide additional information if that would be useful.
Yeah, I think that's what I was really looking for, is a bit more of a breakdown. And so, yeah, and clearly that we have the mechanisms to do that. So, yeah, it would be useful to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. If that could be circulated to all members of the committee, please.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Every.
Yes, first of all, I would like to congratulate the team, because when we first mooted this from the Community Safety Partnership only 2 or 3 years ago, and we had COVID as well, I think that things have moved on well, and it's good to see the stats, but it's also good to see the provision that has happened because of the action plan. And just watching Stephanie run after students at our careers fair with her clipboard in order to catch them, to have an answer. She had 800 students she could capture, but couldn't manage to capture them all. And she got quite a lot of good information. Just to let you know that there is an additional activity now. All our careers coordinators in our secondary schools have all joined together in a network now, and also work with Fenland, and are setting up a young apprenticeship ambassador group. So that's another group that you will be able to engage with and get into the schools at a different level with a different agenda. Okay.
Do we have any further comments to make, or move to debate, or shall I go straight to the vote? It is just for noting. Beg your pardon, it's just for noting. I'm delirious now at this stage. Short report. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Go and enjoy your fish and chips. Right. Home straight team. We're now on agenda item 21A, which is for noting. Does anybody have anything to say on the items 21A and 21B, which are the 2 ARP meetings? No, in which case they are duly noted. Agenda item 22, which was action on the grounds of urgency. Again, we are just noting this. Anybody have any comments to make? No, thank you. And then we now move at last to the forward agenda, where Councillor Trapp has a question about the forward agenda. Are you content with your response? It always does. Yes, it's almost, yeah, yes, we'd like to go backwards, and we're like a push me, pull you. Is that right? We normally can, yes, I believe so.
Yes, we do. The forward agenda plan is for the whole year.
And I think it gives context to see what's gone in the past as well as what's coming up in the future.
Currently, we don't have an awful lot on for January, but I will keep members updated as to whether or not we postpone the meeting. If it's just for noting, seems, but we'll, as I say, we'll see what else comes forward in the next couple of months. But I'd just like to thank everybody for an endurance and a good committee meeting. Thank you very much. I can now bring the meeting at 7:30 to a close. Thank you.
I'm off for fish and chips.